In the heart of a city that never sleeps, where rivers of light carve through the darkness, a man named Leo lies in his bed, his eyes wide open to the ceiling. From the outside, his life is a picture of success, a well-furnished apartment high above the restless streets, a career that demands his intelligence, a life curated with the artifacts of achievement. But inside, there is a howling emptiness, a relentless noise that the silence of the night only seems to amplify. It is the noise of yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's anxieties, a checklist of tasks that never ends, a deep and gnawing sense that something vital is missing. He has everything he was told to want, yet he has no peace. He cannot sleep because his mind will not rest. This is not a personal failure. This is the quiet suffering of our time, a collective illness born from a world that worships busyness. We live our lives to the rhythm of a frantic symphony, a cacophony of notifications, expectations, and the endless pursuit of the next thing, the next goal, the next temporary satisfaction that we believe will finally make us whole. We have become masters of doing, but have forgotten the art of simply being. We are caught in a current, swept along by the desperate need to become someone, somewhere, someday, losing ourselves in the process. The price of this race is our own serenity. It is the anxiety that tightens in the chest, the exhaustion that settles deep in the bones. But what if the solution is not to run faster, to achieve more, or to acquire another possession? What if peace is not something we must find in the world, but something we can rediscover within ourselves? What if there exists a different kind of silence, not an absence of sound, but a profound, healing stillness that lies beneath the turbulence of our thoughts? Ancient wisdom, born from the quiet contemplations of the Buddha, offers not an escape from this life, but a path to go deeper into it, to find a radical sense of peace right in the midst of the chaos. It is a journey to uncover a silence that is not empty, but full of potential. It is a journey to learn how to sleep and to live in the sound of emptiness. Before we can find the silence, we must first learn to listen to the noise. Not the noise of the city, or the traffic, or the conversation in the next room, but the intricate and relentless noise that plays within our own minds. This is not a random collection of static. It is a composition, a complex piece of music that we have been conditioned to accept as the soundtrack of our lives. We can call it the symphony of suffering. To name it this way is not to be dramatic or morbid, but to be honest. It is to recognize that the subtle hum of anxiety, the sharp sting of dissatisfaction, and the heavy weight of stress are not isolated events, but are movements in a much larger piece, a symphony that plays for everyone, in every corner of the modern world. Its first movement is perhaps the most seductive, a beautiful and hopeful melody that draws us ever forward. It is the theme of arrival. We are taught from our earliest days to live for the future, to pin our hopes for peace and happiness on a destination that lies just over the horizon. When I graduate, I will be free. When I get the promotion, I will be secure. When I buy the house, I will finally be able to relax. When I lose the weight, or find the partner, or pay off the debt, then and only then will my real life begin. This is the great arrival fallacy, the pervasive and deeply flawed belief that contentment is a place we get to, a prize we win after a long struggle. We chase this destination with all our energy, believing its promise of lasting peace. And for a brief moment, upon arrival, we may feel it, the rush of achievement, the relief of a goal met. The new car smells wonderful, the new job title feels important, but then, a strange and quiet thing happens. The feeling fades. The beautiful destination, once reached, reveals itself to be just another ordinary place. The deep, existential unease that we thought we had outrun was simply waiting for us to unpack our bags. And so, the mind, unable to accept this, simply picks a new destination. The symphony does not end. It merely begins a new verse, with a new and more distant horizon. This endless cycle of wanting, getting, and wanting again is the fundamental rhythm of our dissatisfaction. It is a thirst that can never be quenched because we are trying to drink from a mirage. The peace we seek is not, and never has been, at the destination. It has been waiting for us in the journey all along, but we were too busy running to notice. The second movement of this symphony is a recent addition to the human experience, a chaotic and jarring section characterized by its speed and fragmentation. It is the noise of the digital world, our minds, which evolved for presence and deep connection with our immediate environment, are now tethered to a global network of infinite information and constant contact. Our attention, our most precious and finite resource, is shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces. A phantom vibration in a pocket can pull us out of a heartfelt conversation. The endless scroll on a screen can consume hours, leaving us feeling strangely empty and more isolated than before. We are bombarded with the curated highlight reels of other people's lives, a constant stream of images and stories that invites comparison and fuels a sense of inadequacy. We are connected to everyone and truly present with no one, least of all ourselves. This is the burden of constant connectivity. There is an unspoken pressure to be available, to have an opinion, to respond instantly, to perform. Our minds are no longer our own private sanctuary. They have become a public square, bustling with the demands and voices of the entire world. This relentless external input prevents the very possibility of deep, contemplative silence. How can we hear the subtle whispers of our own intuition when our inner world is screaming with the headlines and arguments of the digital ether? We have been exiled from the present moment, living in a state of perpetual distraction. We eat our meals while checking emails. We walk in nature while listening to podcasts. We spend time with our loved ones while our minds are still scrolling through the day's news. We are everywhere and nowhere all at once. This fragmentation is not just a minor inconvenience. It is a profound source of anxiety. It creates a mind that is restless, shallow, and incapable of the deep focus that is required for genuine peace. This leads to the third movement, a slow, draining passage filled with a quiet tension. It is the exhaustion of performance. In a world of constant observation, we are all tasked with the monumental effort of building and maintaining a personal identity, a persona for public consumption. We become the chief marketing officer for our own brand, carefully curating the photos we post, the words we use, the image we project. There is the professional self, the social self, the family self, each one a slightly different costume we wear for a different audience. We work tirelessly to project an image of competence, happiness, and success, while often hiding the messy, uncertain, and vulnerable reality of our inner lives. This gap between who we feel we are on the inside and the person we pretend to be on the outside is a source of immense and chronic stress. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to uphold this facade. It requires constant self-monitoring, a fear of being judged, a terror of being found out for the imperfect human being we actually are. This performance is a form of hidden labor. We are the actor, the director, and the critic in a play of our own making, and it is utterly draining. We can become so identified with this curated self that we lose touch with the authentic feelings and desires that lie beneath. We become a stranger to ourselves, the curator of a museum about our own life, rather than the person who is actually living it. The result is a profound sense of loneliness, the kind that can be felt even in a crowded room, because we feel that no one truly sees the real us, perhaps because we are no longer sure who the real us even is. All of these movements, the endless chase, the digital noise, the exhausting performance, are part of a larger truth. This is the final movement of the symphony, the deep, resonant, and foundational chord that underlies all the others. In the language of the Buddha, this is called dukkha. The word is often translated as suffering, but it is far more subtle and profound than that. It is not just the pain of tragedy or loss. It is the pervasive, baseline hum of dissatisfaction that is woven into the very fabric of our conditioned existence. Think of the story of a great king who lived in a palace of unimaginable splendor. He had gardens where it was always spring, storerooms overflowing with gold and jewels, and the finest chefs, musicians, and artists at his constant disposal. Whatever his heart desired, he could have in an instant. Yet, the king was not happy. After the most magnificent feast, a feeling of emptiness would return. After listening to the most beautiful music, a sense of boredom would creep in. He built taller towers. He acquired more exotic animals for his menagerie. He threw more lavish parties, but his inner poverty only grew in the shadow of his external wealth. His shadow was the feeling of not enough, a constant companion that no amount of pleasure could banish. The king's suffering did not come from a lack of anything. It came from the very nature of pleasure itself. It is fleeting. It is impermanent. Dukkha is this fundamental friction between our deep desire for permanence and security and the absolute reality that everything changes. It is the subtle stress of trying to hold on to things that are, by their very nature, like water slipping through our fingers. It is the discomfort of being a fragile, temporary self in a vast and unpredictable universe. Acknowledging dukkha is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of profound realism and courage. It is the first of the Four Noble Truths for a reason. It is the diagnosis that must come before any cure can be effective. It is looking squarely at the human condition and saying, yes, this is how it is. It is a truth that unites the king in his palace and the beggar at his gate. When we see this symphony not as our own personal failure, but as the shared music of the human condition, something remarkable happens. The burden of shame and isolation begins to lift. We are not alone in this. This is the water we all swim in. To simply see it, to acknowledge its presence without judgment, is the first and most powerful step toward finding a different way to listen. And the path forward begins not by trying to stop the music, but by learning to find a single, steady, and unwavering note within the chaos, an anchor of reality to hold on to in the storm. Having heard the grand and tumultuous symphony of our shared modern suffering, it is natural to feel overwhelmed, to feel lost in the storm. The relentless tempo of anxiety, the jarring notes of digital distraction, the mournful cello of our deep-seated dissatisfaction, it can all feel like too much. The immediate impulse is to fight back, to resist the noise, to try and force a silence that will not come. But this is like trying to flatten the waves of an ocean with your bare hands. It is an exhausting and futile struggle. The wisdom of the path begins not with a fight, but with a simple, revolutionary act, finding something to hold on to, not to stop the storm, but to anchor ourselves within it. This anchor is not something you need to buy, or build, or seek out in some distant land. It is not a secret mantra or a complex philosophy. It is something you have carried with you every moment of every day, from the instant of your birth to this very moment now. It is your breath, so simple, so overlooked, and yet it is the most profound and reliable anchor to reality that we possess. The power of the breath lies in its unwavering honesty. Your thoughts can lie to you. They can transport you to a past filled with regret or a future riddled with fear. Your emotions can paint the world with a color that is not truly there. But your breath can only ever be in the now. You cannot take a breath that is in the past. You cannot take a breath that is in the future. Each inhalation, each exhalation is a direct, unfiltered experience of the present moment. To be fully aware of your breath is, by definition, to be fully present. In a world that constantly pulls us away from ourselves, into the realms of memory and projection, the breath is the gentle thread that leads us home. It is the steady rhythm beneath the chaotic melody of our lives. When the mind is racing, lost in a spiral of worry about a meeting tomorrow, the sensation of the air entering your nostrils is happening now. When the heart is heavy with the memory of a past hurt, the feeling of your chest rising and falling is happening now. The breath is a constant, faithful companion, a quiet drumbeat of reality that is always available to us, waiting patiently for our attention. It asks nothing of us. It does not judge us for having been away for so long. It simply is. And in that simple, profound existence, it offers us a refuge from the timelessness of our anxieties, a small, safe harbor in the here and now. So how do we begin to use this anchor? The practice is as simple as it is profound. There is no need for a special cushion or a silent mountain retreat. You can do this right now, wherever you are. Find a posture that is comfortable for you. You can sit in a chair with your feet flat on the floor and your spine upright, but not stiff. You can sit on the floor if that is comfortable. Or you can even lie down, especially if you are using this as a preparation for sleep. The goal is a posture that embodies both alertness and ease. Now, close your eyes, or if you prefer, simply lower your gaze. There is nothing to achieve here, nothing to force. This is not a task to be completed, but an invitation to be accepted. It is an invitation to simply notice. Bring your awareness to the fact that you are breathing. Don't try to change your breath in any way. Don't try to make it deeper, or slower, or more meditative. Your only task is to feel it, just as it is. Where do you feel the breath most clearly in your body? Perhaps it is the subtle sensation of the cool air entering your nostrils and the slightly warmer air as you exhale. Perhaps you notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest. Or maybe you can feel the expansion and contraction of your abdomen, your belly rising with the in-breath and softly falling with the out-breath. There is no right or wrong place to feel it. Simply choose one spot and let your attention rest there, as gently as a butterfly landing on a flower. Feel the full duration of one inhalation. Feel the full duration of one exhalation, and then the next, and the next. You are simply watching the waves of your own life force, rising and falling, without interference. If the breath is shallow, you simply know the breath is shallow. If it is deep, you know the breath is deep. You are cultivating the attitude of a neutral, compassionate scientist, observing the natural phenomenon of your own breathing. Inevitably, perhaps after only one or two breaths, something else will happen. Your mind will wander. It will be carried away by a thought, a sound, a memory, a plan. You will suddenly find yourself thinking about your grocery list, or replaying a conversation from yesterday, or worrying about a bill that is due. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure of your practice. It is simply what minds do. The nature of an untamed mind is to wander. To expect it to be perfectly still is to expect the ocean to have no waves. The moment you notice that your mind has wandered is the most important moment in the entire practice. In that instant of noticing, you have just woken up. There is a beautiful ancient parable that illustrates this perfectly. It tells of a farmer and his powerful, wild water buffalo. The buffalo represents the mind, full of untamed energy, instinct, and old habits. Left to its own devices, it will crash through the jungle, chase after tempting distractions, and get stuck in swamps of negativity. The farmer represents our mindful awareness. The farmer knows he cannot tame the powerful buffalo by wrestling it to the ground. That would only lead to injury and exhaustion for both. But the farmer has a tool. He has a simple rope, and that rope is the breath. The practice of meditation is the practice of the farmer. He doesn't fight the buffalo, he simply holds the rope. When he notices the buffalo has wandered off to eat some enticing but unhelpful plant, he does not shout or whip the animal. He simply feels the rope in his hand, the anchor of the breath, and gently, kindly, guides the buffalo back to the path. Each time he does this, the bond between them grows stronger. Each time you notice your mind has wandered and you gently guide it back to the sensation of the breath, you are not failing, you are succeeding. That is the practice. It is the single, sacred repetition of waking up and gently coming home. Over time, the buffalo learns to walk with the farmer. Its power is not diminished, but it is now harmonious. The mind does not become empty, it becomes an ally. This practice is not merely a psychological exercise. It has a profound and measurable effect on our physical body. Our nervous system has two main branches. There is the sympathetic nervous system, our ancient fight-or-flight response. It is what floods our body with adrenaline and cortisol when we perceive a threat, preparing us to run or to fight for our lives. Then there is the parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest response. It is what allows our bodies to heal, to recover, and to feel safe. The symphony of suffering, with its constant, low-grade stress and anxiety, keeps most of us in a state of chronic sympathetic activation. We are living as if we are constantly being chased by a predator, even when the predator is just an email or a deadline. Conscious breathing is one of the most direct and effective ways to manually engage our parasympathetic nervous system. It is like a secret override switch that we can access at any time. When you consciously slow down your breathing, and in particular, when you make your exhalation slightly longer than your inhalation, you are sending a powerful biological signal directly to your brainstem. This signal says, "We are safe. The threat has passed. You can stand down." In response, your heart rate slows, your blood pressure lowers, your muscles begin to relax. You are using your own breath to speak the language of the body, to tell it that it is safe to let go. You are calming the storm from the inside out, moving from a state of reactive panic to one of grounded presence. The anchor of the breath is not just a poetic metaphor, it is a physiological reality. It is the tool by which we can begin to regulate our own inner state, to find a place of stability in the midst of life's inevitable storms. And from this newfound place of stability, from this anchored point of view, we can now turn our attention to the waves themselves, to the wild and chaotic nature of our own thoughts, without the fear of being swept away. We are now ready to meet the monkey. As you rest your attention on the gentle rhythm of your breathing, you begin to create a small island of stillness in the vast ocean of your experience. At first, this island feels peaceful, a welcome refuge from the noise of the world. But as you spend more time there, you start to notice something astonishing. The loudest, most chaotic noise is not coming from the outside world at all. It is coming from within. It is a whirlwind of thoughts, images, fragments of songs, old conversations, future plans, sudden anxieties, and fleeting desires. This is your first formal introduction to what Buddhist teachers have for centuries called the monkey mind. The metaphor is almost perfect. Imagine your mind is a vast jungle, and in its trees lives a restless monkey. This monkey cannot stay still for more than a second. It swings from one branch of thought to another, propelled by an insatiable and chaotic energy. It grabs a fruit of memory, takes one bite, and throws it away. It screeches at a shadow of fear, then immediately becomes distracted by a glittering leaf of desire. It chatters endlessly, recounting past glories and grievances, then instantly leaps to fabricating dramatic future scenarios. It never rests. It is never satisfied. It is never silent. Our inner world is not just home to one of these monkeys. but a whole troop of them, all clamoring for our attention at once. The Buddha used an even more vivid and startling image to describe the raw, untrained state of the human mind. He said it is like a drunken monkey. Imagine the sheer, unpredictable chaos of that. Its movements are clumsy, its judgments are poor, its actions are erratic and often self-destructive. But he didn't stop there. He added another layer. The untrained mind is like a drunken monkey that has just been bitten by a scorpion. Now, on top of the confusion of its drunkenness, there is the searing, agonizing pain of the scorpion's venom. This is a profound diagnosis of our inner state. The drunkenness is our fundamental ignorance, our confusion about the way things are. We stumble through life, intoxicated by our own beliefs, our attachments, and our aversions, misjudging reality at every turn. And the scorpion bite is the ever-present sting of craving. It is the burning thirst for pleasure, for security, for praise, and the equally burning pain of aversion to discomfort, to criticism, to loss. A mind in this state is not just busy, it is in active, agonizing distress. It thrashes about, driven by pain and confusion, and in its thrashing, it only injures itself more, spreading the venom further. When we look at our own restless, anxious minds through this lens, our perspective can shift from one of frustration to one of profound compassion. This inner chaos is not our fault. We are not weak or broken for having a mind that behaves this way. We are simply carrying the inheritance of the human condition. Our task is not to condemn this poor, drunken, wounded creature, but to learn how to gently and patiently help it to become sober. Our first instinct, when faced with this inner madness, is to fight it. We try to suppress the chattering. We tell the monkey to be quiet. We try to force our mind into a state of blank tranquility. We believe that peace is the absence of thought, and so we declare war on our own thinking. This is a battle that can never be won. In fact, the very act of fighting a thought gives it more power. Imagine trying to hold a large beach ball underwater. It takes a tremendous amount of effort and tension to keep it submerged. You must remain vigilant, constantly applying pressure. But the moment your concentration wavers, the ball doesn't just resurface, it erupts from the water with a force far greater than it had before. Suppressing thoughts works in exactly the same way. The mental command, "I must not think about that stressful project," is, itself, a thought that is fundamentally about the stressful project. You become locked in a struggle with yourself, a draining feedback loop of resistance and resurgence. The monkey loves this game. It thrives on the struggle. Your frustration is its food. The path to peace does not lie through suppression, but through a radical and counterintuitive shift in approach. We must lay down our weapons. We move from a posture of combat to one of curiosity. We stop being the prison guard trying to lock the monkey in a cell, and we become the patient zoologist, sitting quietly on a bench, simply observing the monkey's behavior with gentle, non-judgmental interest. This shift from fighting to observing precipitates the single most liberating insight available to a human being. We have spent our entire lives identified with the monkey. We believed that we were the chatter. When an angry thought appeared in the mind, we concluded, "I am angry." When a sad thought arose, "I am sad." When a fearful thought appeared, "I am a fearful person." We were completely fused with the content of our minds, tossed about by every passing mental event like a small boat in a storm. The practice of anchoring ourselves to the breath and simply watching creates a space. For the first time, we begin to differentiate between the thoughts themselves and the awareness that is noticing the thoughts. This is the great unveiling. This is the discovery that you are not the monkey. You are the one who is watching the monkey. You are not the thoughts. You are the space in which the thoughts arise and pass away. A powerful metaphor for this is the sky and the clouds. The thoughts, feelings, and sensations are like clouds. They drift in, they take on different shapes and colors, and eventually, they drift away. Some are dark and stormy, others are bright and fluffy, but you are not the clouds. You are the sky. The sky is the vast, open, boundless awareness that holds all the clouds. The sky is not damaged by a thunderstorm. The sky does not try to cling to a beautiful sunset. It allows every cloud to come and go, without resistance, without attachment. Its fundamental nature remains clear, open, and peaceful, regardless of the weather. When you truly begin to embody this understanding, your entire world changes. An anxious thought can appear, but instead of becoming the anxiety, you can recognize it as a cloud passing through the sky of your awareness. You can note, anxiety is here. It is no longer "I am anxious." This small shift in language reflects a monumental shift in consciousness. The thought is no longer the definition of you. It is simply a temporary event that you are witnessing. In this space between the seer and the seen, freedom is born. To help cultivate this space, to strengthen this muscle of disidentification, we can use a simple and elegant technique called mental noting or labeling. As you rest your attention on the breath, and the monkey mind inevitably snags it and pulls it away, you simply notice where it has gone and give it a soft, gentle, one-word label. If you find yourself rehearsing what you'll say in a meeting, you can just whisper in your mind, planning. If you are worrying about your health, worrying. If you are lost in a pleasant memory of a vacation, remembering. If a loud noise from the street has caught your attention, hearing. If you feel a dull ache in your back, sensation. The label is not meant to be an in-depth analysis. It is a simple, gentle acknowledgement. It is like touching a soap bubble with a feather. You are just acknowledging its existence before it pops. This practice works in a subtle but powerful way. The act of naming the thought objectifies it. It turns it from being the subject who is running your life into a small, temporary object that your awareness is observing. It neatly cuts through the storyline. Instead of getting lost in the drama of why you are worried and what it all means, you simply note the activity itself, worrying, and then, having noted it, without any judgment or frustration, you gently guide your awareness back to the anchor of the breath. Each time you do this, you are reinforcing your identity as the sky, not the cloud. You are patiently training the drunken monkey, not with force, but with gentle, persistent awareness. You are learning to befriend your own mind. By meeting its chaos with this calm, compassionate attention, we stop feeding its energy. We stop the war. And in the peace that follows, we can begin to look even more deeply at the clouds themselves. And we start to notice something truly profound about their nature and the nature of everything. We notice that they never, ever stay the same. Having learned to sit patiently with the chattering of the monkey mind, we begin to notice something fundamental about the nature of our thoughts. They are not solid things. They are events. They arise, seemingly from nowhere. They exist for a moment, and then they dissolve back into the space from which they came. A flicker of memory, a surge of planning, a pang of worry. Each one is a visitor that does not stay. This observation, this direct experience of the transient nature of our own minds, is our gateway to understanding one of the most profound and central laws of existence. It is a law that governs the life of a distant star, the bloom of a wildflower, the structure of a mountain, and the duration of a single human emotion. This is the law of impermanence. In the ancient language of the Buddha, it is called anicca. It is the silent, invisible, and unstoppable river in which all things flow. To understand this law is not just to understand an abstract philosophy. It is to understand the very reason we suffer and the path to our own liberation. Impermanence is not an opinion. It is a description of reality. Everything, without exception, is in a constant state of flux. Look at the world around you. The mighty mountains that seem so solid and eternal are, over immense spans of time, being pushed up by tectonic forces and simultaneously worn down by wind and rain. The seasons turn, one into the other, in an endless, graceful cycle of birth, growth, decay, and renewal. A river you gaze upon today is not the same river you saw yesterday. Its waters are in constant motion, ever-changing. This law is written into the code of our own bodies. The person you see in the mirror is not a static object, but a dynamic process. Millions of your cells are dying and being replaced at this very moment. Scientists say that over a period of about 7 years, nearly every atom in your body is replaced. You are, quite literally, not the same person you were a decade ago. And nowhere is this river of change more apparent than in the direct experience of our own minds, the laboratory we can access through meditation. As we sit in stillness, we have a front row seat to the ceaseless parade of anicca. An emotion of joy arises. It fills our awareness with warmth, and then, without our permission, it subsides. A wave of sadness washes over us. It feels all-consuming, and yet it too, eventually recedes. A thought, an idea that feels so solid and important in one moment, is replaced by another in the next. Our consciousness is not a solid block. It is a flickering flame, a waterfall of momentary experiences, each one born for an instant, only to immediately vanish and make way for the next. This universal law of change is, in itself, neutral. It is neither good nor bad. It is simply the way things are. The river flows. The suffering, the dukkha we experience, does not come from the fact that things change. It comes from our desperate and futile attempt to stop the river from flowing. It arises from our resistance to reality. We experience a moment of perfect happiness, a beautiful sunset, the warm embrace of a loved one, a feeling of professional success, and our mind immediately grasps onto it. We try to build a dam around the pleasant feeling, to make it permanent. We think, this is it. I want to feel this way forever. But the river of impermanence cannot be dammed. The moment we try to cling, we introduce a new element into our experience, the fear of loss. The happiness becomes tinged with anxiety. We are no longer simply enjoying the sunset, we are already mourning its passing. This is one side of the coin of suffering, clinging to pleasure. The other side is our relationship with pain. When we experience something unpleasant, physical discomfort, a difficult emotion, a painful rejection, we do the opposite, but it is born from the same misunderstanding. We try to push it away. We resist it. We build a wall against it thinking, this shouldn't be happening. I need this to end right now. But this resistance is like trying to fight our way upstream in a powerful river. It is exhausting, and it often only intensifies the struggle, making the pain feel even more solid and oppressive. Both grasping for pleasure and pushing away pain are forms of fighting with reality. They are a declaration of war on the law of Anicca, a war that we are destined to lose every single time. There is a deeply moving story from the time of the Buddha that illustrates this truth with heartbreaking clarity. It is the story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She had married young, and after years of difficulty, she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, her only child. He was the entire world to her, the sun around which her life revolved. Then, one day, the child fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami's grief was so absolute, so shattering, that her mind could not accept it. She refused to believe her son was dead. Clutching his small, lifeless body, she went from house to house in her village, desperately begging for medicine that could cure him. The villagers looked at her with pity and horror. Some shooed her away, others simply closed their doors. Finally, a kind man, seeing her profound delusion, suggested she go and see the Buddha. She ran to him, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for his help. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "There is only one thing that can help your son. I need you to go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed. But," he added, "it must come from a house where no child, no parent, no spouse, no servanthas ever died." Hope surged in Kisa Gotami's heart. A mustard seed was such a simple thing. She set off again, going from door to door. At the first house, she asked, "Can you spare me a mustard seed for the Buddha?" "Of course," the woman of the house replied. But as she was about to take it, Kisa Gotami remembered the Buddha's condition. "Has anyone in your family ever died?" she asked. The woman's face fell. "The living are few," she said, "but the dead are many. My husband died just last year." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Everyone was willing to give her a mustard seed, but in every single home, she heard a story of loss. One had lost a mother, another a daughter, another a father. Slowly, as the sun began to set, the profound truth of the Buddha's lesson began to dawn on her. Her own, personal, unbearable grief was not a unique curse. It was the shared, universal experience of all human beings. Loss was not an accident. It was a fundamental law of existence. Standing there, as the village lights began to twinkle on, she looked down at the cold body of her son, and for the first time, she truly saw. Her heart broke open, not with frantic grief, but with a vast, spacious understanding. She took her son to the charnel ground to be cremated, and as she watched the smoke rise, she said to herself, "This law of death is not just for my son, it is for everyone." In that moment of radical acceptance, her desperate clinging was released, and she found a peace deeper than any happiness she had ever known. We do not need to wait for a great tragedy to learn the lesson of the mustard seed. Our meditation practice is our own journey from house to house. The breath is our teacher of Anicca. Each inhalation is a birth. There is a pause, a moment of life. Each exhalation is a death, a letting go. No two breaths are ever identical. It is a constant, gentle, and undeniable demonstration of impermanence happening within our own bodies, moment by moment. When we observe our bodily sensations, we see the same law at play. An itch arises, it demands our attention, and if we simply watch it without scratching, we can witness it fade away all on its own. A feeling of warmth, a moment of tension, a sense of ease all are fleeting visitors. This is not a philosophy to be believed, it is a reality to be observed directly. And when we truly begin to absorb this truth, it ceases to be a source of pessimism, and instead becomes a profound source of liberation and hope. If everything changes, it means that our pain, our anxiety, our grief, and our despair are also impermanent. They are storm clouds, not permanent features of our sky. They will pass. This understanding gives us the strength to endure difficult times with greater patience and resilience. And more than that, it means that we are not fixed. We are not trapped into being the person we are today. We can change, we can grow, we can heal. The river of impermanence is not a thief that steals our joys. It is a great purifier that also carries away our sorrows, our mistakes, and our old identities, leaving us constantly fresh in the present moment. It is the very engine of possibility. Seeing this, we are no longer fighting the flow of life, but learning to swim within its current. And as we become more comfortable with the ever-changing nature of all that we perceive, a new, even deeper question arises. If everything I see, feel, and think is a constantly changing process, then what about the one who is doing the seeing? What is this I that seems to be watching it all? Is it a solid rock in the middle of the river? Or is it, too, just a part of the water's flow? This question leads us to the very heart of Buddhist wisdom. As we stand on the banks of the river of impermanence, watching the ceaseless flow of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations, a profound question begins to surface. We have accepted that everything we perceive is in flux. The clouds in the sky, the seasons, our bodies, even our thoughts are transient events. But what about the one who is watching? What about this persistent, intimate sense of I that seems to be at the very center of our experience? We feel like a solid, continuous self, a protagonist who was born, is living this life, and will one day die. This feeling of I-ness is the ultimate anchor we hold on to, the bedrock of our identity. The inquiry of Buddhist wisdom now invites us to turn our attention towards this very anchor. It asks us to investigate this self that we take so for granted. Is it as solid as it seems? Or is it too part of the river's flow? This investigation leads us to the most subtle, challenging, and ultimately liberating teaching of the Buddha. It is the teaching of anatta, a word often translated as non-self, or, perhaps more accurately, not self. It is not a declaration that you do not exist, but an invitation to see that you do not exist in the way you think you do. To begin this investigation, let us consider a famous dialogue that took place over 2,000 years ago between a Buddhist sage named Nagasena and a powerful Greek king named Melinda. The king, a sharp and logical man, wished to test the monk's wisdom. He asked Nagasena for his name. The sage replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was merely a designation, a convenient name, and that no permanent individual Nagasena could be found. The king was baffled by this. He pointed to his magnificent royal chariot and used it as an argument. If you exist, venerable sir, then this chariot certainly exists. Nagasena smiled and began to deconstruct the king's logic with a series of simple questions. Your Majesty, he asked, is the chariot the pole to which the horses are harnessed? Certainly not, replied the king. Is it the axle, the wheels, the frame, the reins? To each question, the king gave the same answer. Number. Nagasena then concluded, then, Your Majesty, chariot is simply the name we give to this collection of parts when they are assembled in this particular way. It has no essential, independent existence apart from its components. If you take the parts away, the chariot vanishes. The king, being a wise man, saw the truth in this. Nagasena then gently turned the analogy back upon the king himself. Our sense of self, he explained, is exactly like the chariot. It is a conventional name, a useful label we apply to a collection of constantly changing components. We are a process, not a thing. We are an assembly, not a monolithic entity. So what are these components? What are the wheels, the axle, and the frame of the human self? The Buddha provided a clear and practical model known as the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas. These are the 5 heaps of transient processes that we bundle together and mistakenly label as me. The first is form. This is our physical body, with all its sense organs. As we have already seen, this body is a river of impermanence, constantly changing from birth to death. The second is feeling. This refers not to complex emotions, but to the raw, immediate sensation that arises whenever our senses make contact with the world. It is the simple tone of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. A soft breeze is pleasant, a loud noise is unpleasant. The feeling of the chair beneath you may be neutral. These feelings are incredibly fleeting, changing from moment to moment. The third is perception. This is the mental faculty that recognizes and labels our experience. It sees a patch of color and says blue. It feels a sensation and says cold. It hears a sound and says dog barking. This process of labeling is also in constant flux, dependent on our conditioning and memory. The fourth aggregate is mental formations. This is a vast and varied category that includes all of our habits, biases, opinions, beliefs, moods, intentions, and the ceaseless chatter of the monkey mind. It is everything we typically think of as our personality. It is clear that these are the most volatile and changeable of all the aggregates. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness. This is not some grand, all-encompassing soul, but the simple, flickering awareness that arises in dependence upon the other aggregates. There is seeing consciousness, which depends on the eye and a visible form. There is hearing consciousness, which depends on the ear and a sound. It is not a continuous light, but a series of rapid flashes, arising and ceasing with each moment of knowing. The Buddha's invitation is this: look for a self anywhere within these five aggregates. Can you find a permanent, unchanging you in your body, in your feelings, in your perceptions, your thoughts, or your awareness? Or is it all just a flowing process? Then, look for a self apart from these five aggregates. If you take away the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the thoughts, and the awareness, what is left? The inescapable conclusion, when we look with radical honesty, is that we cannot find a separate, solid self anywhere. The self is a verb, not a noun. If this is true, then what is this powerful feeling of I am that we carry with us every moment? It is a story. It is a narrative that our minds skillfully construct to create a sense of continuity and coherence out of the chaotic stream of experience. This story is incredibly useful for navigating the world. It allows us to remember who we are, to make plans, and to relate to others. There is no need to deny this conventional self. The problem arises when we mistake the story for the reality. We start to believe that we are this fragile, constructed narrative, and we will defend it to the death. This mistake is the root cause of our most toxic emotions. The feeling of envy arises when the story of my life feels diminished by the success in your story. Pride is the feeling of puffing up and reinforcing my story. Anger and defensiveness erupt when my story, my opinions, or my beliefs are challenged. Fear, in its most primal form, is the terror that this story, this constructed self, will be damaged, humiliated, or ultimately annihilated at death. The words me, my, and mine are the building blocks of this story. They are the bricks we use to build the walls of our own prison. When someone criticizes my idea, we feel a personal sting because we have fused our identity with the idea. The teaching of Anatta invites us to see that the idea is just a transient mental formation, a passing cloud. It is not us. To see this is to be unburdened. This is not a belief to be accepted on faith. It is an experience to be explored in your own meditation practice. As you sit and watch your mind, you are conducting the experiment yourself. A thought arises. You can gently ask, who is thinking this? When you look for the thinker, you do not find a little person in your head pulling levers. You just find the process of thinking itself. A feeling of sadness appears. You can ask, who is feeling this? When you look for the feeler, you just find the raw energy of the feeling. The body breathes in and out. You can ask, who is breathing? You don't find a breather, you just find the impersonal, natural process of respiration. To experience this is not frightening, it is not nihilistic. On the contrary, it is described by those who have tasted it as a profound relief. It is like putting down a heavy, invisible backpack that you have been carrying your entire life. The backpack is the exhausting project of having to be somebody, of having to defend and maintain and promote a fragile, fictional self. When you see that there is no solid self to defend, the need for defense falls away. You can be more open, less reactive, and more courageous. Holding our identity more lightly allows us to engage with the world with greater freedom and compassion. The chariot is still there. It is still a useful vehicle for getting around. You still have your name, your history, your personality, but you are no longer fooled into believing that you are the chariot. You see it for what it is, a temporary assembly of changing parts. This new, spacious perspective fundamentally changes our relationship with our inner world. When a powerful emotion like anger or joy arises, if it does not belong to a solid, permanent me, then what is it? It is simply energy. It is simply a weather pattern. It is simply a cloud passing through the vast, open sky of awareness. Having seen that the solid self is an illusion, a temporary assembly of changing parts, we can now turn to one of its most powerful and volatile components, our emotions. For most of our lives, we relate to our emotions as if they are absolute truths that define us. When joy arises, we cling to it. When anger, fear, or sadness appear, we either become consumed by them or we try desperately to push them away. We live on an emotional roller coaster, tossed about by every peak and valley, believing that we are at the mercy of this inner weather. The wisdom of this path, however, offers a radically different perspective. It invites us to see that emotions are not who we are. They are simply visitors passing through. They are energy and information, like the clouds that drift through the vast, open sky of our awareness. They are temporary phenomena. Our task is not to control the weather, but to learn how to be the sky, to cultivate a spacious and compassionate awareness that can hold every emotional storm without being disturbed by it. Our first and most fundamental mistake is that we categorize our emotions into two opposing teams, the good ones and the bad ones. Happiness, joy, love, and excitement are good. We welcome them, we strive for them, we feel successful when they are present. Anger, fear, jealousy, and sadness are bad. We resist them, we feel ashamed of them, we see them as signs of failure or weakness. This inner segregation creates a state of perpetual civil war. We are constantly trying to banish half of our own human experience. But what if this binary view is fundamentally flawed? What if emotions are not good or bad, but are simply messengers, delivering vital information in the language of the body? From this perspective, every emotion has a purpose. Fear is not a weakness, it is a form of intelligence. It is a messenger that arrives to inform us of a potential threat, to energize our bodies for caution and alertness. Anger is not inherently destructive. It is a powerful surge of energy that often signals a boundary has been violated, motivating us to protect what is important. Sadness is not a state to be avoided at all costs. It is a messenger of loss, an energy that invites us to slow down, to reflect, to grieve, and ultimately, to heal. When we can learn to see our emotions in this way, our relationship with them begins to transform. We shift from being a victim of their power to being a curious and compassionate listener. The question changes from, how do I get rid of this feeling? To, what is this energy trying to tell me? We stop shooting the messenger, and instead, we invite it in to hear its news. This shift in attitude is the first step. The next is to learn the practical skill of how to be with these messengers without getting swept away by their intensity. This is where we return to the powerful metaphor of the sky and the clouds. You, the awareness, are the sky. Your emotions are the clouds. The sky is never harmed or stained by even the most violent thunderstorm. The sky does not try to hold onto a beautiful, fluffy cloud. It maintains its vast, open, and peaceful nature, allowing all weather to simply come and go. The reason we get into trouble is that we forget we are the sky. The moment a dark cloud of anxiety appears on the horizon, we abandon our sky-like nature, fly up into the cloud, and become completely identified with it. We get lost in the story that the cloud tells. The raw energy of anxiety arises, and the monkey mind immediately begins its frantic narration. Oh no, I feel anxious. It must be because of that presentation next week. I'm not prepared. I'm going to stumble over my words. Everyone will think I'm an idiot. I might lose my job. In seconds, we have gone from a simple, raw sensation in the body to a full-blown catastrophe movie playing in our heads. This storyline is what fuels the emotion, what turns a passing cloud into a week-long hurricane. The antidote is to practice dropping out of the storyline in your head and into the raw sensations in your body. When you feel an emotion begin to arise, make a conscious choice to investigate it as a physical phenomenon. Ask yourself, where is this feeling in my body? Is that anger a heat in your chest and a tightness in your jaw? Is that sadness a heavy, hollow feeling in your stomach? Is that anxiety a frantic, vibrating energy behind your sternum? Get curious about its physical qualities. Does it have a size, a shape, a texture? Is it hot or cold? Is it moving or still? By focusing your attention on these raw, physical sensations, you are doing something radical. You are bypassing the narrative-spinning monkey mind. You are relating to the emotion as pure energy, just as it is, before the mind has wrapped it in a story of judgment and fear. And when you can stay with these raw sensations, you will discover for yourself the truth of impermanence. The energy will shift, intensify, move, and eventually, if you can give it the space, it will dissolve on its own. Beyond this neutral observation, we can bring an even more powerful quality to our experience: kindness. We can learn to meet our most difficult emotions with a warm and welcoming heart. This practice, known as metta, or loving kindness, is a balm for the inner war. When a wave of loneliness washes over you, instead of immediately reaching for your phone or some other distraction, you can try placing a hand over your heart. You can say to yourself, silently, "It's okay. I feel you, loneliness. There is space for you here." When you feel the sharp sting of jealousy or the hot flush of anger, you can meet it with the same gentle allowance. Anger is here. It's okay. Let me feel what this is like, with kindness. This is a profoundly healing act. For our entire lives, we have treated these feelings like unwanted intruders, trying to lock them in the basement. This act of welcoming them, of offering them a cup of tea, is revolutionary. It stops the cycle of resistance. Often, the very feelings we have spent our lives running from, all they ever wanted was to be seen, to be acknowledged without judgment. When you meet your own pain with this radical acceptance and compassion, its power over you begins to wane. It is no longer a monster in the dark, but a wounded part of yourself that is asking for your care. The transformative power of this fearless, compassionate presence is perfectly illustrated in the story of a man named Angulimala. He was a terrifying serial killer who roamed the forests, murdering travelers and cutting off one of their fingers to add to the gruesome garland he wore around his neck, a necklace that gave him his name, Angulimala, Garland of Fingers. He was the embodiment of pure, unadulterated rage and violence. The villagers were petrified, and no one dared to enter the forest. One day, despite all warnings, the Buddha began to walk calmly and alone down the path into Angulimala's domain. Angulimala saw him from a distance and was overjoyed at the prospect of another victim. He drew his sword and began to run, but a strange thing happened. Though he was a strong warrior running at full speed, he could not catch up to the Buddha, who was only walking at a normal, serene pace. Exhausted and confused, Angulimala screamed, "Stop, monk! Stop!" The Buddha, without turning, replied in a clear, calm voice, "I have already stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." Angulimala was stunned. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped killing, stopped harming, stopped running on the wheel of hatred. You are the one who is still running." In that moment, the Buddha's boundless compassion and complete lack of fear met Angulimala's towering rage. The rage, having nothing to fight against, no fear to feed on, simply collapsed. It was like a great wave crashing against the vast, open ocean. It had nowhere to go but to dissolve back into the water from which it came. Angulimala threw down his sword, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and asked to become his student. This story teaches us that if even the most monstrous rage can be transformed by being met with fearless presence, then surely the smaller storms within our own hearts, our anxieties, our sorrows, our insecurities can also be met with this same quality of spacious, compassionate awareness. By ceasing to fight our own inner weather, we learn to rest in the unwavering peace of the sky. This practice of allowing, of non-resistance, cultivates within us a profound and unshakable inner quality. It builds a foundation of deep and resonant stillness. Having learned to meet our inner weather with a spacious and compassionate heart, we stop adding fuel to the fire of our emotional storms. We cease our resistance, and in doing so, we create the possibility for a profound quiet to emerge. This quiet is not a dead or empty silence. It is not the silence of a barren desert. It is a rich, vibrant, and alive quality of being. It is stillness. In our modern world, we often confuse external silence with internal peace. We might escape the city for a quiet retreat in the mountains, only to find that we have brought the noise with us, packed neatly inside our own minds. The true path to peace lies not in silencing the world outside, but in cultivating a deep and resonant stillness within. This stillness is not an absence of sound or thought, but a profound presence of awareness, a ground of being from which we can experience the world with unparalleled clarity and wisdom. To understand the nature of this stillness, let us use a simple and ancient metaphor. Imagine that your mind is a lake. For most of our lives, the water of this lake is murky and turbulent. The constant stream of our thoughts, judgments, anxieties, and plans is like the mud and sediment from the lakebed, constantly being stirred up. Our habitual tendency is to engage with every single thing that surfaces. A worry appears, and we dive in, churning the water as we wrestle with it. A desire arises, and we thrash towards it, creating more waves. A memory surfaces, and we stir up the past, clouding the present. In this state of perpetual agitation, the water is so murky that we cannot see anything clearly. We cannot see the bottom of the lake, where our deeper motivations and patterns lie hidden. We cannot see the true nature of the fish, our thoughts and feelings that swim within it. And most importantly, the surface of the water is so disturbed that it cannot reflect the world as it is. It offers only a distorted, fragmented, and confusing picture of the sky and trees on the shore. Mistaking this murky turbulence for the fundamental nature of our mind, we live in a state of confusion and reactivity. Faced with this murky water, our first instinct is often to try and force it to be clear. We try to grab the mud with our hands and throw it out of the lake. We try to suppress our thoughts, to battle our anxieties, to command the waters to be still. But as we have learned, this struggle only stirs the mud up further. The act of fighting with our own mind is the very source of its turbulence. The path to clarity is therefore a radical one, something that runs counter to every productive, problem-solving instinct we have. The path is to do nothing at all. It is the practice of intentional, mindful non-doing. This is not the same as laziness or apathy. It is a highly active and courageous choice to let go of control. It is to sit patiently by the shore of our own inner lake and to simply allow the natural process of settling to occur. We take our seat, anchor our awareness in the gentle rhythm of the breath, and we simply watch. A thought arises. We notice it, as we might notice a leaf falling onto the surface of the water, but instead of chasing it, analyzing it, or judging it, we simply let it be. We withdraw our energy and our engagement from it. The leaf floats for a moment, and then the gentle current of impermanence carries it away. With each thought we choose not to stir, with each emotion we allow to pass without creating a story around it, we are allowing one more particle of mud to gently, slowly, drift down to the bottom of the lake. We are not forcing stillness. We are creating the conditions for stillness to arise on its own. As we patiently practice this art of non-doing, something miraculous begins to happen. The water begins to clear, and in this newfound clarity, two extraordinary things are revealed. First, we begin to see the contents of our own minds with startling precision. Before, there was just a chaotic, murky mess. Now, as the sediment settles, we can see the landscape of our own lakebed. We can see the rocks of our deep-seated fears and limiting beliefs. We can see the shimmering sands of our forgotten joys and strengths. We can observe the habitual patterns of our thinking, seeing them not as who we are, but simply as well-worn grooves on the bottom of the lake. This clear seeing is non-judgmental. It is simply seeing what is there. This alone is a profoundly healing experience. The second fruit of stillness is that the surface of the lake becomes calm and smooth, like a flawless mirror. A still mind reflects reality with perfect fidelity. It can see the world as it is, free from the distortions of our own inner turbulence. This is the birth of what in Buddhism is called insight, or vipassana. It is a direct, intuitive seeing into the nature of existence. It is in this state of inner stillness that we can finally hear what has been drowned out by the noise. Beneath the shouting of the ego and the frantic chatter of the monkey mind, there is a quieter, more subtle intelligence. It is the voice of our own innate wisdom, our intuition, our compassion. This voice does not shout, it whispers. It can only be heard when we are truly quiet enough to listen. Stillness is the fertile ground from which this deep wisdom can finally grow. This stillness is not a fragile state that can only be found on a meditation cushion in a quiet room. It is a robust and portable quality of being that we can learn to carry with us into the heart of our daily lives. It is the moment of pause we take before responding in a heated argument, allowing the muddy waters of anger to settle before we speak. It is the quiet presence we bring to sipping a cup of tea, fully experiencing its warmth and flavor without being lost in 1,000 other thoughts. It is the ability to walk down a busy street, aware of the sights and sounds, but anchored in a deep sense of inner calm. We learn that we can access this inner lake of stillness at any moment. It becomes our sanctuary, an unshakable core of peace that is available to us, regardless of the chaos of the external world. We discover that stillness is not a place we must go to, but a home within ourselves to which we can always return. As the waters of our minds settle into this profound clarity, we not only see ourselves and our own patterns more clearly, we also begin to see the reflection of the world in a new light. On the still surface of the lake, we see that nothing is separate. The reflection of the tree on the shore depends on the water. The water is nourished by the rain from the sky. The light from the sky gives life to the tree. We begin to directly perceive the intricate, shimmering web of connection that links all things together. This perception of radical interconnectedness is not a mere philosophy, but a direct insight born from stillness, and it is the gateway to understanding the very mechanics of how life unfolds. As the waters of the mind settle into a deep and lucid stillness, a new way of seeing begins to emerge. The surface of the inner lake, now calm and clear, reflects the world with astonishing fidelity. In this reflection, we notice that nothing stands alone. The image of the tree on the shore is inseparable from the water that reflects it, the sky that illuminates it, and the earth that supports it. We begin to perceive, not as a philosophy, but as a direct experience, the intricate and shimmering web of connections that binds all of existence together. This direct seeing is the gateway to one of the Buddha's most profound and practical teachings, a concept known as dependent origination, or paticca samuppada. It is the master key that unlocks the mysteries of impermanence and non-self. It explains the how of reality. It shows us that nothing arises from nothing, and nothing exists in isolation. Everything comes into being in dependence upon other factors. To understand this is to understand the mechanics of our own suffering and the precise point at which we can intervene to find freedom. Let us begin with a simple object, something you can hold in your hand or in your mind right now, a single sheet of paper. Our ordinary perception sees it as just that, a sheet of paper, a distinct and separate thing. But the eye of contemplation, the eye that has been clarified by stillness, sees much more. To have this sheet of paper, we must first have a tree. But to have a tree, we must have the non-tree elements that support it. We must have the sun, which provides the energy for photosynthesis. We must have the rain, which provides the water to nourish its roots. We must have the soil and the clouds and the air. So, the sun, the rain, and the soil are all present in this sheet of paper. If we were to remove any one of them, the paper could not exist. Looking more deeply, we can see the logger who cut down the tree. This means the logger's parents are also in the paper, for without them, there would be no logger. The wheat that the logger ate for breakfast is in the paper. The farmer who grew the wheat is in the paper. The factory worker who operated the machinery, the truck driver who transported the finished reams, the person who sold it in a store, all of them, along with their own vast networks of causes and conditions, are present in this single sheet of paper. It is not a separate entity. It interres with the entire cosmos. It is empty of a separate self, but it is full of everything else. This is the practical, tangible reality of non-self. Everything is made only of that which is not itself. To scale this understanding up to a cosmic level, ancient Buddhist seers envisioned a magnificent and beautiful metaphor, the celestial net of the god Indra. Imagine a vast, infinite web stretching across the entirety of space and time. At every single point where the threads of the web cross, there hangs a single, brilliant, multifaceted jewel. The net is so vast that the jewels are numberless. But here is the most wondrous aspect of this net. If you were to look closely at the polished surface of any one jewel, you would discover that it reflects every other jewel in the entire net. Every single one. And if you were to look even more closely at any of those reflections, you would find that each of them also reflects all the other jewels, and so on, in an infinite regression of mutual reflection. Each jewel represents a single phenomenon in the universe, a galaxy, a person, a thought, a blade of grass. Each one exists only as a reflection of all the others. Its existence is entirely dependent on the rest of the net. Furthermore, each single jewel contains within its own surface the image of the entire net. The whole is present in every part, and every part is essential to the whole. This is a perfect illustration of dependent origination. We are all jewels in Indra's net. Our lives are not isolated events, but are intricately woven into the fabric of everyone and everything else. What affects one jewel sends a shimmering vibration throughout the entire web. This profound law of interconnectedness does not only apply to external objects, it applies most intimately to our own inner world, especially to our suffering, our anxiety, our anger, our sadness. These things do not arise from nowhere. They are not random punishments. They are links in a chain of cause and effect. The Buddha analyzed this process with scientific precision, but we can understand it very practically by observing our own experience. Imagine you are walking down the street. Your eye makes contact with a beautiful, expensive car in a showroom window. That is the first link, contact. Immediately, a feeling arises in the mind, in this case, a pleasant feeling. That is the second link, feeling. Now, here comes the most crucial moment, the fork in the road. An untrained mind, operating on autopilot, will immediately react to the pleasant feeling with a surge of desire. This is the third and most pivotal link, craving or thirst. The mind says, I want that. If I had that car, I would be happy and respected. This craving then solidifies into the next link, clinging or grasping. The mind becomes obsessed. We start to fantasize about driving the car. We imagine the envy of our friends. We attach our sense of self-worth to the possibility of owning it. This entire chain reaction, from contact to clinging, inevitably produces the final link, suffering. It is the subtle, gnawing dissatisfaction of not having it, the stress of striving for it, the envy towards those who do. Even if we get the car, the suffering just changes its form. Now we worry about it being scratched, stolen, or surpassed by a newer model. The suffering was not in the car itself. It was generated by the automatic, unconscious reaction of craving in our own mind. The liberating news of dependent origination is this: because our suffering arises from conditions, If we can change the conditions, the suffering will not arise. We have the power to break the chain. The weakest link is the one between feeling and craving. Through the practice of mindfulness, we can learn to experience a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling without automatically reacting. We can simply observe the pleasant feeling as a temporary, impermanent sensation and let it pass without generating the thirst for more. We can stand at the fork in the road and choose a different path, a path of non-reaction, of wise observation. This is how we snip the strings that make us a puppet to our own habits. When we truly begin to see the world through the lens of Indra's net, and we understand that our own inner states are the result of this conditional process, it inevitably and profoundly changes our relationship with other people. If our own thoughts and actions are the product of countless causes and conditions or upbringing, our education, our culture, our neurochemistry, then it must be true for everyone else as well. When someone acts in a way that is hurtful or unkind, our immediate, reactive response is anger and judgment. But a deeper understanding allows for a more spacious and compassionate view. We can see that their harmful action is also the result of a chain of causation. It is the product of their own suffering, their own ignorance, their own murky lake. Their anger is the result of their own fear. This does not mean we excuse or condone harmful behavior. We can still protect ourselves and set firm, clear boundaries. But we can do so with a heart free from hatred. We can separate the action from the person. We see that they too are a jewel in the net, reflecting their own set of painful and confusing conditions. This insight dissolves the hard, artificial line we draw between us and them, between self and other. It is the fertile soil from which true, unsentimental compassion grows. It is the logical and unavoidable consequence of seeing things as they truly are. When we see our profound interconnectedness, the heart naturally begins to open. When we truly begin to perceive the world as Indra's net, when we see with the clarity of a still mind that every being and every event is intricately woven together in a seamless fabric of cause and effect, a profound shift occurs. The illusion of our separateness begins to dissolve, seeing that the suffering of another is a ripple that inevitably touches our own shore, and that our own well-being is inseparable from the well-being of all. The heart's natural and intelligent response is to open. This opening is not a sentimental feeling, nor is it a moral duty to be performed with a heavy heart. It is the spontaneous radiance of wisdom. It is the warmth that emanates from the light of seeing things as they truly are. This is the path of compassion, the active and intentional cultivation of an open and boundless heart. It is the practice of learning to love the world, not because it is perfect, but because it is interconnected. It is the antidote to the poisons of fear, anger, and isolation that keep our hearts in a cage. The journey of opening the heart begins in the most intimate and often the most challenging place, with ourselves. We are so often our own harshest judges, our own most relentless critics. We carry a detailed internal ledger of all our perceived flaws, our past mistakes, and our secret shames. To offer ourselves the same unconditional kindness that we might easily offer to a friend can feel foreign or even undeserved. But without this foundational act of self-compassion, any love we try to extend to others will be shallow, like trying to pour water from an empty cup. To truly nourish the world, we must first learn to nourish ourselves. The practice for this is beautifully simple and profound. It is called metta, or loving kindness meditation. You can begin by finding a comfortable posture, perhaps placing a hand gently over your heart to create a physical sensation of warmth and connection. You then silently repeat a series of phrases directed towards yourself. The specific words are less important than the sincere, heartfelt intention behind them. You might try phrases such as, "May I be safe and protected from harm. May I be healthy and strong in body and mind. May I be happy and truly at ease. May I live with peace and be free from suffering." As you repeat these phrases, try to feel them resonate within you. You are offering yourself a gift of unconditional goodwill. At first, this might feel mechanical or even bring up feelings of resistance. The mind might argue, "But I don't deserve to be happy. But I am not a good person." Notice these arguments as you would notice any other thought as clouds passing through the sky, and gently return to the phrases. You are planting seeds in the soil of your own heart. With patient repetition, these seeds of kindness will begin to sprout, creating an inner sanctuary of acceptance and peace from which you can then engage with the world. Once the stream of kindness begins to flow towards ourselves, we can start to widen its channel. The next stage is to bring to mind a benefactor, someone for whom we feel easy and uncomplicated love. This could be a dear friend, a beloved family member, a mentor, or even a pet. Picture them clearly in your mind's eye. See them smiling, and then direct the full force of your well wishes towards them, using the same phrases. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy and at ease. May you be free from suffering. Feel the natural warmth and openness in your heart as you do this. This stage helps to get the energy of metta flowing freely, unhindered by judgment or complication. After spending some time here, we expand the circle again, this time to include a neutral person. Bring to mind someone you see regularly, but have no strong feelings about a cashier at a local store, a neighbor you only nod to, someone you see on your daily commute. We know nothing of their struggles, their joys, their fears. By including them in our practice, we are actively breaking down the barrier of indifference. We recognize their humanity. We acknowledge that, just like us, their deepest wish is to be happy and to be free from suffering. And so we offer them the same phrases. May you be happy. May you be well. This is a powerful step in dissolving the illusion of the stranger. The next stage is the most challenging and transformative. We now bring to mind a difficult person. It is wise to start with someone who is only mildly irritating, not the source of your deepest trauma. This practice is not about condoning their harmful actions or forcing a superficial forgiveness. This practice is a gift you give to yourself. It is about liberating your own heart from the corrosive poison of resentment. Holding on to anger, as the saying goes, is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. So, with this intention of freeing yourself, you bring this difficult person to mind, and, as best you can, you extend the phrases of loving kindness. May you be safe. May you find peace. If this feels impossible, you can shift the focus slightly. Recognizing from our understanding of dependent origination that their harmful actions arise from their own suffering and confusion, you can simply wish, may you be free from the causes of your suffering. In this moment, you are not validating their actions, but you are refusing to let their actions imprison your heart in hatred. Finally, we expand the circle to its ultimate conclusion. We let our awareness radiate outwards from our heart in all directions, front, back, left, right, above, and below, to encompass all living beings without exception. Friends, enemies, strangers, humans, animals, all beings in all realms. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings everywhere be happy. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering. In this final stage, all distinctions dissolve. There is no us and them. There is only a boundless heart, wishing well for all of life, recognizing our shared existence in the great, interconnected web of being. This practice reveals that true compassion, or karuna, is not the same as pity. Pity comes from a place of separation and perceived superiority. It looks down from a height and says, "Oh, you poor thing." Compassion stands on level ground. It looks you in the eye and says, "We are in this together." It is the heart's ability to resonate with the suffering of another, to feel it as our own, which then generates the spontaneous and active wish for that suffering to be relieved. It is the living, breathing embodiment of the wisdom of non-self. The story of a sick monk from the time of the Buddha illustrates this perfectly. A certain monk was suffering from dysentery, a terrible and messy illness. He lay alone in his own filth, and the other monks, perhaps out of fear of contagion or simple disgust, neglected him completely. The Buddha, hearing of the situation, went to the sick monk's lodging. Without any hesitation, he began to boil water. Then, with his own hands, he gently washed the sick monk's body, cleaning his soiled robes and his living quarters. Once the monk was comfortable, the Buddha gathered the other monks together. He asked them why they had abandoned their brother. Then he spoke these powerful words. "You have no mother and no father here to care for you. If you do not care for one another, who then will? Monks, know this. Whoever attends to the sick and the suffering, attends to me." This is the essence of active compassion. It is not an abstract feeling, but an embodied action. It is seeing our shared nature in the face of another's vulnerability and responding with a loving heart and helping hands. When our hearts become this open, this fearless, this resilient, our minds also become vast. We are no longer afraid to look directly at the deepest nature of reality. Having cultivated a mind that is clear and still, and a heart that is open and compassionate, we are now ready to approach the profound and liberating mystery that lies at the core of this journey, the beautiful truth of emptiness. With a mind that has been steadied by stillness and a heart that has been softened by compassion, we are now prepared to approach the very summit of this path of wisdom. We have walked through the landscape of our own experience and discovered its fundamental laws. We have seen that all things are impermanent, constantly changing like a flowing river. We have investigated our own sense of self and found no solid, separate entity. only a changing process. And we have seen that all phenomena, ourselves included, arise interdependently, woven together in the vast, shimmering web of Indra's net. These three insights: impermanence, non-self, and dependent origination are like three distinct pathways that all converge at a single, breathtaking peak. This peak has a name that, to the unprepared ear, can sound frightening or desolate. It is the teaching of emptiness, or shunyata. This is the unifying principle, the profound truth that illuminates all the others. It is often called the gateless gate, a portal to liberation that has no door and no frame. To understand emptiness is to walk through this gate, and to realize that you were, in fact, always on the other side. Before we take another step, it is crucial that we clear away the thickets of misunderstanding that surround this word. In the English language, emptiness carries a heavy weight of negative connotations. It suggests a painful void, a lack, a state of nihilistic despair. It sounds like a denial of life, a declaration that nothing matters and nothing exists. This is the absolute opposite of what is meant by shunyata. Buddhist emptiness is not nothingness. It is not a black hole that negates existence. The world you see, the chair you are sitting on, the sound of these words, the feeling of the breath in your lungs, these things are real in a conventional sense. The teaching of emptiness does not deny their existence. It clarifies the way in which they exist. The key is to understand that the word means empty of something specific. It means that all things, without exception, are empty of a separate, independent, intrinsic, and permanent self. Nothing exists from its own power, sealed off from everything else. Think back to our sheet of paper. We saw that it was full of the sun, the rain, the forest, and the logger. The teaching of emptiness would say that the paper is empty of being just a paper. It is empty of a solitary, independent identity. And precisely because it is empty in this way, it is able to be full of the entire universe. Its emptiness of a separate self and its fullness of everything else are not two different things. They are the same reality, viewed from two different angles. Emptiness, therefore, is not a void. It is a radical fullness. It is the very interconnectedness that allows things to be. With this new understanding, we can see how emptiness is the natural synthesis of all the wisdom we have gathered so far. It is the thread that ties everything together. Consider impermanence. Things can grow, change, and decay precisely because they are empty of a fixed, unchanging essence. If a tree were full of some permanent, unalterable treeness, it could never grow from a seed, nor could it ever rot and become soil. Its ability to change is proof of its emptiness of a fixed nature. Consider non-self. The realization that there is no solid, controlling CEO inside our minds is simply the application of emptiness to our own being. We are empty of a separate self, and because of this, we are a dynamic, flowing process of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Consider dependent origination. The principle that everything arises in dependence on causes and conditions is the dynamic, functional expression of emptiness. Things are able to influence and create each other precisely because they are not sealed off, independent entities. They are empty, and therefore, they are relational. Emptiness is the what, and dependent origination is the how. They are two sides of a single, profound coin. Emptiness describes the nature of reality in a static moment. Dependent origination describes how that empty reality functions and unfolds through time. To grasp this liberating potential, let us turn to another simple metaphor, a cup. What is it that makes a cup useful? Is it the clay or the glass that forms its walls? Is it the glaze or the handle? These things are part of the cup, but its essential utility, its very cupness, lies in the empty space within. It is the emptiness that allows it to hold water. It is the emptiness that allows it to fulfill its function. If the cup were completely solid, completely full of itself, it would be useless. This same principle applies everywhere. A room is useful because of the empty space within it, which allows us to live and move. A wheel is useful because of the empty space at its hub, which allows it to be placed on an axle. A musical instrument produces beautiful notes because of the empty spaces that allow air to resonate. And language itself has meaning only because of the empty silence that separates the words. In this light, emptiness is not a lack or a void. Emptiness is potentiality. It is the ultimate ground of possibility. It is the silent, spacious canvas upon which the entire universe is painted. It is the fundamental freedom that allows all forms, all life, and all experiences to arise and dance. The Zen tradition, in its effort to push the mind beyond its conceptual limits to a direct experience of this reality, developed a tool known as the koan, A koan is not a riddle with a clever answer, but a paradoxical question designed to break the logical, dualistic mind. One of the most famous was posed by the master Hakuin. He said to his students, "We all know the sound of two hands clapping. Now, show me the sound of one hand." The rational mind immediately goes to work. It tries to solve the puzzle. Is it silence? Is it the sound of the wind? Is it a philosophical trick? The mind searches for an answer within its usual framework of cause and effect, of subject and object, of sound and its opposite, silence. But the koan is designed to shatter that very framework. Our entire world of thought is built upon pairs of opposites, self and other, birth and death, good and bad, existence and non-existence. The sound of two hands represents this dualistic world, where one hand, self, must strike another, other, to produce a result, experience. The sound of one hand points to the reality that exists before this division. It points to the seamless, unified, non-dual reality that the teaching of emptiness describes. It is an invitation to stop thinking about reality and to simply be it. It asks us to listen not with our ears, but with our entire being, to the vibrant, silent hum of existence before our mind cuts it up into pieces. It points to the living, breathing truth of shunyata. Therefore, emptiness is not a bleak endpoint, but a liberating starting point. It is the discovery that reality is not a collection of rigid, separate, and fragile things, but a flowing, open, and resilient dance of interconnected energy. It is the realization that because things are empty of a fixed self, they are free to become, to change, and to relate. It is the ultimate yes to life, an embrace of the universe in all its dynamic and mysterious beauty. Understanding this intellectually is the first step, like reading a map of a new and wondrous country. But the question remains, how does this profound emptiness relate to the world of vibrant and specific forms that we experience every day? How can the world be simultaneously empty of a separate self, and yet so full of mountains, rivers, people, and emotions? This apparent paradox leads us to the very center of the Buddha's insight, a truth so profound it is called the heart of wisdom. It is the understanding that emptiness is not other than form, and form is not other than emptiness. At the very heart of this journey into the nature of reality lies a teaching so concise and so profound that it has been treasured for centuries as the essence of wisdom. It is found in a text called the Heart Sutra, and its central proclamation is a stunning paradox that seems to defy all logic. The sutra declares, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form." This short phrase is not a riddle to be solved, but a direct statement of truth to be realized. It is the key that unlocks the final door, resolving the apparent contradiction between the interconnected, transient, and selfless nature of reality, and the vibrant, tangible, and vivid world that we experience with our senses every day. It shows us that these are not two different realities. They are, and have always been, one and the same. To unpack this statement is to see the world with new eyes, to understand that the sacred is not separate from the ordinary, and that liberation is found not by escaping the world, but by seeing it for what it truly is. Let us first explore the first half of this declaration. Form is emptiness. To begin, we must understand what is meant by form. In this context, form is not just the physical shape of an object. It refers to absolutely anything that can be perceived or conceived by the mind. A mountain is form, a cloud is form, the body you inhabit is form, but it goes deeper than that. A thought is also form. An emotion, like a surge of joy or a pang of sadness, is a form that arises in the mind. The sound of a bell, the taste of honey, the feeling of warmth from the sun, all of these are forms. It encompasses every object, every sensation, every thought, every feeling that constitutes our known universe. The statement, then, is that all of this, all of the rich tapestry of our experience, is fundamentally empty. As we have seen, this does not mean it is nothing. It means it is empty of a separate, solid, independent existence. When we look deeply into any one form, it dissolves into the web of relationships that supports it. We pick up a flower. It is a beautiful, distinct form, but we look for the flowerness, the essence of the flower, and we cannot find it. We find only non-flower elements, the sunlight, the rain, the soil, the bee that pollinated it, the entire history of the cosmos that led to this moment. The form of the flower is completely empty of a standalone self. It is full of the universe, and therefore empty of itself. This is true for everything. The form of your anger is empty of a solid, independent anger thing. It is made up only of changing bodily sensations, fleeting thoughts, and chemical reactions. The form of a melody is empty of a separate melody thing. It is made up only of individual notes and the silent spaces between them. When we look for the solid, separate entity, it vanishes under our gaze like a mirage. This is the first half of the truth. Every form, when properly understood, is seen to be empty. Now we must turn to the second, more subtle, and arguably more important half of the statement. Emptiness is form. This is the clause that saves the teaching from falling into nihilism. It pulls us back from the brink of believing that reality is just a blank, featureless void. It tells us that this emptiness we have discovered is not some otherworldly realm, not a separate dimension that we can escape to. You do not find emptiness by negating or destroying the world of form. Emptiness is found right here, in this very world. Imagine a master sculptor standing before a large, rough block of marble. A lesser artist sees only a heavy, shapeless stone. But the master sees a beautiful statue sleeping within it. The emptiness of the marble, its lack of a fixed, predetermined shape is the very potential that allows the statue to emerge. The sculptor does not create the form by adding anything to the stone. He simply removes everything that is not the statue. He reveals the form that was already latent as a possibility within the emptiness of the block. In the same way, emptiness is the ultimate fertile potentiality from which all possible forms arise. It is the silent canvas that makes every color and every brushstroke possible. It is not a denial of the painting. It is the absolute condition for the painting's existence. Therefore, this emptiness, this lack of separate self, this ground of pure potential, does not hide behind the world. It manifests as the world. The 10,000 forms of life, the mountains, the rivers, the people, the joys, the sorrows there, the vibrant, dynamic, and unceasing dance of emptiness. The emptiness is not somewhere else. It is the very aliveness and expression of what we see. Emptiness is, at this very moment, taking the form of the chair you sit on and the breath you are breathing. To hold both of these truths together in our minds, let us use the most perfect metaphor for this teaching: a wave upon the ocean. A wave is a distinct and undeniable form. It has a beginning and an end, a shape, a size, a particular character. Some waves are gentle ripples, others are towering and powerful. No one would deny that a wave is a real, perceivable form. This wave is our world of form. But what is this wave made of? Is there any solid, separate wave stuff to be found? Number? If we look deeply into the nature of the wave, we find only water. The wave is entirely dependent on the water for its existence. It is empty of being a separate, independent entity apart from the water. So, we can say, the wave is water. This is the first half of the teaching. Form is emptiness. The wave, form, is, in its essence, water, emptiness. But where do we find the water? Do we have to dive underneath the waves to some still, separate abyss? Number? The water is right here, manifesting as the wave. The very movement, the expression, the life of the water is displaying itself as the shape and action of the wave. The water is not other than the wave. So, we can also say, the water is the wave. This is the second half of the teaching. Emptiness is form. The water, emptiness, is expressing itself completely and perfectly as the wave, form. They are not two different things. A wave is simply the way water moves. To speak of the wave and the water as separate is a fiction of language. They are a non-dual reality. This is the heart of wisdom. The world is not a collection of solid, separate objects like rocks in a field, nor is it a meaningless, nihilistic void. It is a magical and dynamic display, a shimmering, energetic dance. The forms of the world are conventionally real. A wave can certainly get you wet, but their ultimate nature is the vast, open, and creative potential of emptiness. They are transient patterns, arising and ceasing in a boundless ocean of possibility. To see this is to be liberated from our two greatest fears: the fear of clinging to things as if they were solid and permanent, and the fear that, ultimately, everything is meaningless. It allows us to participate fully and joyfully in the dance of life, to love the beauty of the particular waves, while never forgetting that our true nature, and the nature of all things, is the vast, unshakable peace of the ocean itself. To understand this with the mind is to stand on the shore and appreciate the beauty of the ocean. But the path of meditation offers something even more profound. It offers us the chance to stop being just an observer on the land and to realize our own nature as the water itself. It invites us to experience this non-dual reality directly. So how do we do that? How do we go beyond just thinking about the ocean and begin to feel its silent, deep reality beneath the surface motion of the waves? How do we learn to listen to the sound of emptiness itself? We have journeyed with our intellect to the highest peaks of wisdom, using words and metaphors as our guide. We have contemplated the truth that all the forms of this world are like waves on a great ocean, distinct and real on one level, yet ultimately inseparable from the vast, empty, and potential-filled water that is their source. We have entertained the profound idea that form is emptiness and emptiness is form. But a map, no matter how precise, is not the territory itself. A description of water, no matter how eloquent, cannot quench a real thirst. The ultimate purpose of this path is not to construct a flawless philosophy about life, but to have a direct, unmediated, and liberating experience of reality. The time has now come to put down the map, to move beyond concepts and theories, and to learn how to listen, not with our ears, but with our entire being. We are going to learn how to listen to the silence from which all noise is born. We are going to learn to hear the sound of emptiness. Imagine a master musician, a virtuoso who can make an instrument sing with breathtaking beauty. If you were to ask this musician for the secret to their art, they would of course speak of the notes, the melodies, and the harmonies. But with a tone of reverence, they would also speak of something else. They would speak of the silence. It is the subtle pause after a poignant phrase that allows its emotional weight to settle in the listener's heart. It is the rhythmic space between the notes that creates the energy and drive of a piece. It is the vast, silent backdrop of the concert hall that gives each individual sound its preciousness and its power. Without the silence, there can be no music. There can only be an intolerable wall of noise. The silence is not the absence of the music. It is an indispensable part of the music itself. Our minds are much the same. Our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations, these are the notes. For most of our lives, we are completely captivated by them. We chase the pleasant notes, we run from the dissonant ones, and we are so busy with this frantic activity that we fail to notice the most fundamental aspect of our own experience, the vast, silent awareness in which all these notes arise and dissolve. This awareness is the silence of the mind. The practice of listening to the silence is the practice of shifting our attention from the notes to the space between them, from the fleeting content of our minds to the timeless context of awareness itself. So how do we begin this practice of deep listening? We begin, as always, by finding a comfortable posture and allowing the initial turbulence of the mind to settle. We then gently guide our awareness through 3 successive layers of subtlety. We start with the most accessible layer, the silence that holds all sound. Let your awareness open up to the soundscape around you right now. Perhaps there is the hum of a fan, the distant sound of traffic, the chirping of a bird. Ordinarily, we focus on these sounds as distinct objects, but now, try to shift your perspective. Instead of focusing on the sounds themselves, can you become aware of the vast field of silence in which these sounds are appearing? The sounds are temporary disturbances, like ripples on a quiet pond. The silence was here before the sound of the bird, and it will be here long after the bird has flown away. The silence is the fundamental reality. The sounds are the momentary appearances. Can you let your attention relax and rest in that spacious, silent background, allowing sounds to simply come and go without hooking you? You are learning to notice the canvas, not just the paint. You are listening to the silence that makes sound possible. Having attuned ourselves to this outer silence, we now bring our attention inward, to a more subtle layer. We bring our awareness to the rhythm of the breath. We have used the breath as an anchor, focusing on the sensations of the inhalation and the exhalation. Now, we are going to refine our focus. Pay close attention to the full cycle of your breath. There is the in-breath, there is the out-breath, and if you are patient, you will notice that at the end of the exhalation, there is a tiny precious gap before the next inhalation naturally begins. It is a moment of complete suspension. It is a moment when the body has fully let go and has not yet begun to grasp for the next breath. This pause is a tiny doorway into the great stillness. For just an instant, the relentless rhythm of doing and getting stops. Can you learn to rest your awareness in that gentle pause? There is no need to force it or to make it longer. Just notice it. Recognize it as a moment of pure, peaceful being. Each time you rest in that gap, you are becoming more familiar with the silent ground of your own existence. From this place of deeper quiet, we are now ready to approach the most subtle layer of all, the space between our thoughts. As you sit in meditation, you will notice that thoughts continue to arise. They are like clouds drifting through the sky of your mind. Our old habit was to jump on board every cloud and get carried away by its story. Our new practice is to become more interested in the sky itself. Instead of focusing on the thoughts, can you become aware of the silent space from which the thoughts emerge and into which they dissolve? At first, this space might seem non-existent. The thoughts may feel like they are seamless, one immediately following the other in an unbroken chain. But this is an illusion created by the speed of the mind. As you relax your focus, as you let go of your intense interest in the content of the thoughts, you will begin to perceive the gap. There is a moment, however fleeting, of pure mental quiet between the end of one thought and the beginning of the next. As you learn to recognize this space, it will begin to expand. You are shifting your identity from the cloud to the sky. You are no longer a victim of your thoughts, but the vast, open awareness that effortlessly contains them all. Resting in this inner space is the essence of this practice. This silence, this space that we are cultivating, is not a dead, empty void. When you touch it, you will find that it is vibrant and alive. It is deeply peaceful, but it is not dull or sleepy. It is suffused with a quiet, alert intelligence. It is the experience of awareness itself, naked and unadorned. The poetic phrase, "the sound of emptiness," is a paradox designed to point to this experience. It is not a sound that can be detected by the eardrums. It is, perhaps, the subtle resonance of being itself, the hum of pure potential before the mind has carved it up and applied labels to it like tree, chair, me, you, joy, or sorrow. It is the direct taste of the water before it has taken the form of any particular wave. To experience it is not an act of effort or striving. In fact, it is the opposite. It is an act of profound relaxation. It is the letting go of our habitual, tight focus on the objects of our experience and simply allowing our awareness to rest in its own nature. It is like when you are staring intently at a single word on a page, and then you relax your eyes and suddenly become aware of the entire white page on which the word is printed. We are relaxing the focus of our mind to become aware of the vast, white page of consciousness itself. Learning to abide in this silent, spacious awareness is to come home. It is to return to our most fundamental nature, the peaceful ground of being that was here before our first thought and will be here after our last. And when we can touch this ground, even for a moment, it changes everything. It becomes the ultimate medicine for all our wounds, the unshakable sanctuary in the midst of life's storms. We have traveled to the conceptual peak of this wisdom path and gazed upon the profound truth of emptiness. We have understood, with our intellect, that all things are like waves on an ocean, empty of any separate, independent self. But philosophy, however profound, can feel cold and distant when we are in the throes of real, visceral pain, when our hearts are broken by grief, when our bodies are trembling with anxiety, or when our minds are clouded by despair. What good is an abstract concept like emptiness? The answer, which lies at the very heart of this practice, is that emptiness is not a cold concept, but the most powerful and compassionate medicine we could ever find. It is not a denial of our pain, but the very space in which our pain can finally heal. This is where the path moves from theory to therapy, from intellectual understanding to the direct, gentle mending of the human heart. To grasp how this healing works, the Buddha offered a simple, brilliant metaphor. Imagine you have a small lump of salt. This lump of salt represents any painful experience in your life. It could be a sharp word of criticism that wounded your pride, a wave of profound sadness from a loss, a surge of anxiety about the future, or a chronic physical pain. Now, if you take this lump of salt and drop it into a small cup of water, what happens? The water becomes intensely salty, bitter, and completely undrinkable. A single drop on the tongue would make you recoil. This small cup represents our ordinary, constricted mind. It is the mind that is tightly identified with a solid, fragile sense of self. It is the mind that takes everything personally. When a painful experience, the lump of salt enters this small, constricted container, it contaminates everything. The pain feels all-consuming. It becomes my anxiety, my grief, my failure. We fuse with the pain, and our entire world shrinks to the size of that small, bitter cup. Now, imagine you take that very same lump of salt, exact same painful experience, and you walk to the shore of a vast, deep, freshwater lake. This immense lake represents the mind that has begun to taste the truth of emptiness. It is a mind that is spacious, open, boundless, and aware. You toss the lump of salt into this great lake. The salt dissolves into the enormous volume of water. It is still there. Its essence has been received, but its power to overwhelm has vanished completely. The water of the lake does not become undrinkably salty. Its fundamental nature remains pure, calm, and clear. This metaphor reveals the central secret to healing. The problem is not the salt. Pain, loss, and difficulty are inevitable parts of a human life. We will all be given lumps of salt. The true problem is the size of the container. Our practice, then, is not the futile and exhausting effort to get rid of all the salt in our lives. Our practice is to expand the container of our own mind to become the Great Lake. Let us apply this directly to a difficult emotion, such as anxiety. In our ordinary, cup-sized view, we experience a surge of anxious energy and we immediately label it and claim it. I am anxious. We fuse our entire identity with the feeling. This creates a solid, heavy thing called my anxiety, a personal affliction that we carry around like a stone. It feels real, oppressive, and intensely personal. But when we apply the wisdom of emptiness, we investigate this thing. We look for the solid, independent entity called anxiety. We look for it in the body, and we find only a collection of changing, impersonal sensations. A tightness in the chest, a rapid heartbeat, a coldness in the hands. We look for it in the mind, and we find only a stream of fleeting, fearful thoughts and images. We discover that there is no solid anxiety thing. The form of anxiety is empty of a core self. In that moment of seeing, the salt begins to dissolve. The story shifts from I am anxious to the energy of anxiety is passing through this body and mind. It is no longer a personal failure, but an impersonal weather pattern moving through the vast sky of our awareness. It loses its solidity, its power, and its personal sting. This same healing principle applies to difficult life situations. We lose a job, a cherished relationship ends, we face a public failure. Our cup-sized mind immediately solidifies the situation into a terrible thing. We believe that the event itself possesses an inherent power to make us suffer. We are crushed by our narrative about the event. This is a disaster. My life is ruined. I will never recover. But the wisdom of emptiness invites us to see that the situation itself, like all forms, is empty of any inherent meaning. The loss of a job is, in itself, a neutral event. It is a set of circumstances. It is not inherently good or bad. All the suffering comes from our interpretation, our story, our desperate clinging to how we thought things should have been. By seeing the emptiness of the situation, we stop giving it the power to define us. We can still feel sadness or fear. The salt is still there, but these feelings no longer contaminate the entire lake of our being. This spaciousness allows us to respond to the practical realities of the situation with creativity, resilience, and grace, rather than being paralyzed by the weight of our own tragic story. This vast, open perspective does more than just heal our personal wounds. It dissolves the very walls that make us feel so alone in our suffering. When we are trapped in our small cup, our pain feels intensely private and isolating. It is my pain, and no one else can understand it. It is me against a hostile or indifferent world. But as our mind expands into the Great Lake, we see that the self who is suffering is also empty of a solid core. The walls of the separate self become transparent. We realize that our pain is not uniquely ours. It is simply pain, a universal human energy. Our grief is grief. Our fear is fear. It is part of the great, shared inheritance of dukkha. In this recognition, our personal suffering connects us to the suffering of all beings. We look at another person and realize they too are struggling with their own lump of salt in their own cup. Our heart naturally opens in compassion, not from a place of pity, but from a place of deep and authentic kinship. We are all in this vast lake together. This, then, is the ultimate redefinition of healing. Our conventional model of healing is often one of warfare and elimination. We want to fight the disease, kill the pain, remove the scar, get rid of the unpleasant memory. We want to return to a state where the salt never existed. But this is often impossible, and the fight itself is a form of suffering. The healing that comes from emptiness is a healing of integration, not elimination. It is the understanding that true wellness does not come from having a life free of salt, but from becoming a mind so vast and deep that any amount of salt can be received with equanimity and compassion. The scars of our past may not disappear, but they cease to be sources of pain. They become patterns on the lake bed, visible in the clear water, but no longer capable of making the water bitter. They become part of the richness and depth of our landscape. Healing is not about making the pain go away. It is about growing a heart so vast and a mind so spacious that the pain can no longer hurt you. When we find this source of boundless space and well-being within, our frantic search for it in the world outside naturally begins to subside. Our relationship with the world of things, of status, of material possessions, is about to fundamentally change. Having discovered within ourselves a vast lake of stillness, a spacious and healing ground of being that is independent of our external circumstances, we can now turn our gaze back towards the world with new eyes. We can begin to gently question the fundamental assumptions upon which most of our lives are built. Chief among these is the pervasive, powerful, and deeply ingrained belief that our happiness, our security, and even our very identity can be found in the accumulation of things. We live in a world that whispers and shouts this promise from every screen and every billboard, that the right car, the right clothes, the right house, the right title will finally fill the persistent, quiet ache of incompleteness that haunts us. This relentless pursuit of more is the engine of our modern culture, and seen from a compassionate perspective, it is not a sign of greed or moral failure, but is in fact a deeply human, though tragically misguided, response to the subconscious recognition of our own emptiness. The wisdom of non-self, or anatta, reveals that we have no solid, fixed, and independent core. We are a flowing process, a temporary collection of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. On a deep, intuitive level, this can feel unsettling. It can feel as though we are ghosts, unmoored and insubstantial. And so, we embark on a lifelong project to make the ghost feel solid. We attempt to build a self, to construct an identity, by surrounding our fluid nature with solid-looking things. Our possessions become the building blocks of our ego. We think, I am the person who drives this kind of car, and the brand of the car seems to lend us its own brand of solidity. We think, I am the person who wears this kind of watch, and its precision and weight seem to make our own self more precise and weighty. The home, the clothes, the accolades, the job title, they all become external props for the fragile story of me. We are trying to fill the inherent emptiness of our own nature with things from the outside. It is a desperate attempt to find security in a world that is fundamentally impermanent. This strategy, however, is doomed to fail. It is like trying to carry water in a sieve, because the inner feeling of lack is not a lack of things. No amount of things can ever truly fill it. This is why the thrill of a new purchase is so fleeting. For a moment, the new object distracts us. It gives the ego a temporary boost, but soon, the underlying feeling of unease returns, and the mind immediately latches onto a new object, a new desire, believing that this next thing will finally be the one that provides lasting satisfaction. This is the very definition of a prison we build for ourselves. When we apply the lens of emptiness to the very objects of our desire, their power over us begins to dissolve. Consider a luxury automobile. As a form, it is beautiful, powerful, and skillfully engineered. But what is it, really? It is a temporary assembly of metal, glass, rubber, and plastic. It is empty of any inherent, independent value. The story that makes it worth 100 times more than another car is just that, a story. A collective agreement woven from branding, marketing, social status, and desire. To see the emptiness of the car is not to deny its beauty or its function. It is to be liberated from the delusion that owning it will add anything fundamental to the core of your being. The same is true for status and reputation, which are even more obviously empty. What is a job title? It is a few words, a transient concept that has meaning only within a specific organizational structure. What is fame or a large social media following? It is nothing more than a collection of other people's fleeting and fickle thoughts. To build your identity on the good opinion of others is to build your house on the surface of a stormy sea. It is a state of constant, exhausting anxiety, because you are clinging to forms that are utterly ephemeral and outside of your control. There is an old story that powerfully illustrates this truth. A very wealthy merchant decided to move to a new land. He sold all of his properties and converted his entire fortune into a chest of pure gold. This chest was his life. It was his past success and his future security. It was the solid proof of his identity. He boarded a ship, keeping the chest by his side at all times, guarding it with a jealous and anxious heart. Halfway through the voyage, a terrible storm descended upon the ship. The winds howled, and immense waves crashed over the deck. The vessel was taking on water and beginning to sink. The captain ordered the crew to lighten the load by throwing all heavy cargo overboard. He turned to the merchant and told him that the chest of gold had to go, or they would all drown. The merchant was paralyzed with horror. The gold was not just his money, it was his life. He saw his entire identity, his worth, his very self, contained in that heavy box. To let it go felt like a form of suicide. He clung to the chest as the cold seawater swirled around his knees. And then, in a moment of terrifying clarity, as the ship groaned beneath him, he was faced with the ultimate choice. He could have his gold and sink with it to the bottom of the ocean, or he could let go of the gold and save his life. He realized, in that instant, that the gold had absolutely no value if he was not alive. With a great cry, he shoved the chest overboard into the churning sea. He felt a pang of loss, but it was immediately replaced by an incredible sense of lightness. He arrived in the new land with no possessions, but he was alive, and, for the first time, he felt truly free. Our attachments are this heavy gold. We cling to them, believing they are our security, when in fact they are the very things that threaten to sink us when the inevitable storms of life, sickness, loss, old age, and death arrive. The path of wisdom, then, is not a call for a life of forced poverty or grim asceticism. The problem was never the gold itself. The problem was the merchants desperate, life or death, clinging to the gold. The goal is not to renounce the world, but to renounce our attachment to it. We can learn to enjoy the beauty and comfort of material things, to use money as a skillful tool for our own well-being and for the benefit of others. But we do so with a light touch. We use these things, but we are not owned by them. We do not make them the foundation of our inner peace or our self-worth. This leads to the discovery of what constitutes true wealth. True wealth is not the endless accumulation of more, but the quiet and profound discovery of what is enough. It is the inner state of contentment, when we have touched the vast, open, and peaceful nature of our own awareness, when we know that we are the great lake and not the small cup. The desperate thirst to fill ourselves from the outside naturally and gracefully subsides. We realize we are not, and never have been, empty in a way that a thing could fill. Our nature is emptiness itself, which is the boundless potential for all things. We are already whole. We are already rich beyond measure, in the infinite space of our own awakened mind. This transformation in what we value does not stop with our relationship to inanimate objects. It extends into the most vital and complex area of our lives, changing how we relate to the people we hold most dear. Having seen through the illusion that material things can provide lasting happiness, we arrive at an even more intimate and powerful object of our attachment, our relationships with other people. For many of us, love is the ultimate prize, the final sanctuary, where we hope to find the acceptance, security, and wholeness that eludes us elsewhere. This path of wisdom does not, in any way, devalue or deny the profound beauty and importance of human connection. It does not ask us to live a life of cold isolation. Instead, it offers us the key to a deeper, more authentic, and far more liberating form of love, a love that is free from the poisons of fear, jealousy, and control. To do this, we must use the clear lens of emptiness, to look honestly at the ways we love, and to distinguish between a love that is based on grasping and a love that is based on freedom. For most of us, what we call love is often deeply entangled with attachment. It stems from that same familiar, inner sense of lack, the feeling that we are an incomplete half in search of our missing part. We look to another person to fill our own emptiness, to validate our existence, to make us feel whole. While this kind of love can contain moments of genuine tenderness and joy, it is built on a foundation of sand, because it is rooted in need rather than generosity. This attachment-based love has several telltale signs. It is possessive. It carries a subtle, or sometimes not so subtle, undertone of ownership. The other person becomes my partner, my love, our most cherished and important possession. And because we fear losing our most prized possession, this love is saturated with a constant, low-grade fear. It is the fear that the other person will change, that they will leave us, or that they will be taken from us by the inevitable currents of life. This fear, in turn, breeds control. We try to manage the other person, to shape them into the image we need them to be, to ensure that they will continue to meet our needs. The relationship becomes a subtle, unspoken transaction. I will give you my love, so long as you continue to make me feel secure and happy. This is the love of a hungry ghost, always seeking to consume, always terrified of being left empty again. There is a simple, beautiful metaphor that captures the essence of this dilemma. Imagine that love is a handful of fine golden sand that you wish to hold. Your first instinct, born from the fear of losing it, is to clench your fist as tightly as you possibly can. You grasp and you squeeze, believing that your control will keep it safe. But of course, the opposite happens. The tighter you squeeze, the more quickly the fine grains of sand trickle out between your desperate fingers. Your very effort to possess the sand is what guarantees that you will lose it. This is the tragedy of attachment love. Its own fear and grasping suffocate the very thing it longs to hold. Now, imagine a different approach. Instead of clenching your fist, you simply hold your hand open, with the palm relaxed and facing the sky. The sand rests gently in your palm. You can feel its texture, its warmth. You can appreciate its beauty fully, without the tension of trying to control it. You are not trying to own it. You are simply providing a loving, open, and unconditional space for it to be. Of course, a strong gust of wind, the wind of impermanence, may come and blow the sand away. That is the nature of life. But your open hand was not the cause of its departure. This is the nature of wisdom, love. It is the love of the open hand. This wisdom love is born directly from an understanding of emptiness. It begins with the profound recognition that both you and the person you love are empty of a solid, separate, unchanging self. You are both flowing rivers of thoughts, feelings, and experiences, not two static rocks. And if a person is a flowing process, how can you possibly possess them? The very idea is an absurdity. To try and own another person is like trying to own a section of a river. This understanding immediately liberates us from the burden of possessiveness. Wisdom love also fully embraces the truth of impermanence. It does not live in denial of reality. It knows, with a clear and gentle acceptance, that the other person will change, that you will change, and that the form of your relationship will constantly evolve. It knows that all meetings end in parting, whether through choice, circumstance, or death. By accepting this from the very beginning, this love is free from the chronic, underlying anxiety about the future. It allows you to love the person fully and completely in the here and now, to cherish the present moment of connection, without demanding that the moment last forever. Freed from the need to possess and the fear of loss, love's true nature can finally reveal itself. It is no longer about what you can get from the other person, but about what you can freely and joyfully give. True love, from this perspective, is the sincere and unconditional wish for the other person to be happy and to be free from suffering. It is the practice of metta and karuna loving kindness and compassion supported by the clarity of wisdom, or prajna. You love them for their sake, not for yours. Their happiness becomes a source of your own joy. Whether or not it directly involves you, you give them the greatest gift you can possibly offer another human being, their freedom. You provide the open palm, the safe space in which they can be who they are and who they are becoming, without the pressure of your expectation. This is a fearless and boundless love, a love that trusts in the flow of life. When we view this through the cosmic lens of Indra's net, it becomes even more profound. The separation between self and other is a conventional illusion. In the non-dual reality of emptiness, to love another is to love a different manifestation of your own being. The joy you give to them is not separate from your own joy. It is a resonance that vibrates through the entire web of existence. The freedom you offer to them is a freedom that you yourself experience, as you are released from the prison of your own clinging and fear. Love ceases to be a mere transaction between two egos, and it becomes a spiritual practice, an active participation in the interconnected, compassionate nature of the universe itself. By learning to love in this way, we heal one of the deepest and most painful sources of human suffering. We stop using other people as a solution to our own feelings of lack, and we learn to meet them from a place of fullness and generosity. Having applied this liberating wisdom to our inner world, our relationship with material things, and our connections with others, we can now turn our attention to one of the most fundamental and mysterious rituals of our daily lives. We can learn to bring this same quality of spacious, non-clinging awareness to the nightly act of surrender that we call sleep. Having explored the nature of our mind, our world, and our relationships through the liberating lens of emptiness, we can now bring this profound wisdom to bear on one of the most fundamental and often fraught areas of our lives, the simple act of sleep. For many of us in the modern world, the approach of bedtime is not a welcome relief, but a source of anxiety. We may finish our busy day, but our minds refuse to stop working. We lie in the dark, and the symphony of suffering plays its loudest movements. We worry, we plan, we relive conversations, we catastrophize about tomorrow. Sleep becomes a performance we feel we are failing, and the more we desperately try to fall asleep, the more agitated and awake we become. This nightly battle turns our place of rest into a place of struggle. But there is another way. We can transform this time from a trial into a treasured ritual. We can learn to see the hour before sleep as a sacred practice, a conscious and loving process of letting go, preparing the ground of our body and mind for deep, restorative peace. This sacred ritual begins not in the mind, but in our environment. It is the conscious creation of a sanctuary, a signal to our entire nervous system that the day of doing is over and the time of being is about to begin. At least 1 hour before you intend to sleep, begin to dim the lights. Our bodies have an ancient, intelligent rhythm that is deeply attuned to the cycles of light and darkness. The bright, blue-toned light from our screens and overhead lamps is a signal to the brain that it is still midday. It suppresses the production of melatonin, the hormone of sleep, keeping us in a state of artificial alertness. By switching to soft, warm, gentle lighting, we are sending a powerful message to our body. The sun is setting, it is time to wind down. This is also the time for a digital sunset. We must consciously unplug from the matrix of the world's information, put away the phone, the tablet, the laptop, This is not merely about avoiding blue light. It is about disconnecting from the relentless stream of stimulus that keeps our minds agitated. It is about creating a sacred buffer zone, an empty space between the demands of the world and the sanctity of our own rest. Instead of scrolling through news feeds or stressful emails, we can choose to fill this time with gentle, calming sensory input. Perhaps we read a few pages from a physical book, one that soothes rather than excites. Perhaps we listen to soft, instrumental music, or we can simply sip a warm, caffeine-free tea, paying full attention to its warmth and aroma. We are consciously and methodically lowering the volume of the world, creating an outer silence that invites an inner stillness. With the outer sanctuary prepared, we now turn to the inner ritual. Find a comfortable place to sit for just 10 or 15 minutes, perhaps on the edge of your bed. Close your eyes and take a few deep, gentle breaths. Now, allow the day that has just passed to come to mind. Do not judge it. Do not analyze it. Simply let it appear. Picture yourself gathering up all the events of the day, the work you did, the conversations you had, the moments of joy, the moments of frustration, the successes, the failures. Imagine you are holding all of it in your hands, like a bundle of wood. Feel its weight. Acknowledge everything that happened. Thank the day for its lessons. And now, with a clear and conscious intention, you are going to let it go. As you exhale, imagine this bundle dissolving into particles of light and disappearing into space. Or picture it as a cloud that gently floats away on the breeze, vanishing over the horizon. With each out-breath, you release your grip a little more. You are making a conscious decision. The work of today is done. Its joys are now memories. Its challenges are now lessons. You do not need to carry them with you into your place of rest. You are closing the file on today, leaving it complete, so that you can enter your sleep with a mind that is clear and unburdened. Having released the mental and emotional residue of the day, we now bring our attention down into the body. Our bodies are the silent keepers of our stress, holding tension in the jaw, the shoulders, the back, often without our conscious knowledge. A body scan meditation is a beautiful way to release this physical armoring. Lying comfortably on your back, or still sitting if you prefer, bring your full attention to the tips of your toes. There is nothing to do, nothing to fix. Simply feel whatever sensations are present. Perhaps there is warmth, or coolness, or a tingling sensation. As you breathe out, imagine you are sending your warm, relaxing breath all the way down to your toes, giving them permission to be completely soft. Then, slowly, guide your awareness upward. Move to the soles of your feet, your ankles, your calves, and your shins. In each area, you are simply noticing, feeling, and letting go with the out-breath. Continue this gentle journey up through your knees, your thighs, your hips, and your pelvis, releasing the deep tension held there. Bring your awareness to your stomach, letting it be soft, and to your lower back, allowing it to sink into the surface beneath you. Let your attention travel up your spine, across your shoulder blades, and feel your shoulders themselves, a common reservoir of stress, become heavy and drop away from your ears. Move your awareness down your arms to your hands and your fingers. Finally, bring your attention to your neck, your jaw, your cheeks, the tiny muscles around your eyes, and your forehead. Let them all go. Let your entire body be heavy, relaxed, and at peace. This practice not only calms the physical body, but it anchors the mind firmly in the present moment, making it much harder for it to be swept away by anxious thoughts. Now, with our outer world quieted, our mind unburdened from the day, and our body deeply relaxed, we can embrace the final step in this sacred ritual. Let us consider the wisdom of a farmer. A wise farmer works diligently all day. She prepares the soil, sows the seeds, provides water, and removes the weeds. But when night falls, she goes home to her bed and she rests. She does not stand in the field all night, shining a lamp on the seeds, anxiously commanding them to grow. She does not worry and fret and try to force the process. She knows that she has created the right conditions, and now she must surrender to a natural intelligence far greater than her own. She trusts the mysterious and sacred process of growth to happen in the darkness while she sleeps. Sleep is exactly the same. We have now done our work. We have created the right conditions, and now we must let go and trust the deep, natural intelligence of our own body and mind to perform the sacred work of healing and restoration. Instead of lying in bed with the anxious demand, "I must sleep now," we can shift our attitude to one of gentle, trusting surrender. We can set a soft intention. As you finally lay your head on the pillow, you can whisper to yourself, "I now offer this body and this mind to deep rest," or "May this sleep be peaceful and healing." We are not demanding a result. We are simply letting go of the oars and allowing the gentle current of the river to carry us into the great mystery of the night. With our vessel prepared, our heart open, and our mind willing, we are now ready for the final practice. We are ready to lie down not as a person trying to get to sleep, but as awareness itself, ready to dissolve into the silent, spacious, and healing sound of emptiness. When the gentle warmth of loving kindness, the sincere wish for all beings to be happy, encounters the cold, hard reality of suffering, it does not extinguish, it transforms. This warmth, this metta, when it touches the pain of another, deepens into something exquisitely powerful, something active and courageous. This is the birth of karuna, which we translate as compassion. It is not merely a feeling, but a fundamental trembling of the heart, a profound recognition of shared experience that moves us from passive well-wishing into a state of engaged empathy. It is the heart's answer to the cry of the world. There is a crucial distinction to be made at the very outset, a distinction that clarifies the entire path of practice. Compassion is not pity. Pity stands at a distance. It looks down from a place of perceived safety or superiority. Pity says, I am here, and you, poor thing, are over there in your suffering. It creates a chasm between the observer and the observed, reinforcing a sense of separation. It can feel condescending, and it keeps our own heart safely guarded, untouched by the raw reality of another's pain. Compassion, on the other hand, closes that distance. It steps into the circle of suffering, not out of a sense of obligation, but out of a recognition of shared reality. Compassion understands that the boundary between my suffering and your suffering is porous, illusory. It whispers, not from above, but from beside. I feel this with you. Your pain resonates within me, because I too know what it is to suffer. Pity reinforces the ego, the sense of a separate, fortunate self. Compassion dissolves the ego, revealing the fundamental interconnectedness of all existence. A common fear arises when we speak of compassion. The fear is that if we truly open our hearts to the suffering in the world, we will be drowned by it. We see the vast ocean of pain, the news headlines, the personal struggles of our friends and family, our own private sorrow sand. We feel that opening ourselves to it would be like opening a floodgate with no way to control the deluge. We would be overwhelmed, paralyzed by a sorrow too great to bear. This is a misunderstanding of karuna. True compassion is not a passive sponge, soaking up the pain of the world until it is heavy and waterlogged. It is an active, resilient quality of the heart. The Buddha described it as a quivering of the heart, which is a perfect image. It is not the shattering of the heart, but a sensitive vibration. It is the ability to be present with pain, to let it touch us without being destroyed by it. It requires immense strength, the strength to keep the heart open even when it is aching. This strength is not a form of armor. It is a form of deep flexibility and resilience, cultivated through practice. It understands that our task is not to carry the entire weight of the world's suffering, but to respond to the suffering that is right in front of us with a wise and open heart. The practice of compassion, therefore, does not begin by forcing ourselves to feel the pain of every being on the planet. That would indeed be overwhelming. It begins with something much quieter, much closer to home. It begins with the simple, honest recognition of our shared human condition. We can start by reflecting on the truths we have already explored. Every single person we meet, without exception, has experienced disappointment. Every person has felt the sting of loss, the anxiety of uncertainty, the pain of sickness, the fear of death. The CEO in the high-rise tower, the barista who serves us coffee, the person driving too slowly in front of us, the political figure we disagree with. Every one of them has a heart that knows what it is to break. They have all felt misunderstood, lonely, or afraid at some point in their lives. When we look at another person not as a role or a label, but as a fellow being who is subject to these same universal laws of existence, the ground for compassion is tilled. We see past the surface level differences and connect at the level of our shared vulnerability. This is not a depressing thought. It is a profoundly unifying one. It is the foundation upon which the entire edifice of karuna is built. There is no story that illustrates this journey from personal grief to universal compassion more beautifully than that of Kisa Gotami. She was a young woman living in the time of the Buddha, and her life was defined by one singular joy, her infant son. He was the light of her world, the center of her universe. And then, one day, the child fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami's world collapsed into an unbearable darkness. Consumed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness, she refused to accept that her son was gone. She clutched his small, lifeless body to her chest and went from house to house, desperately seeking medicine that could bring him back. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help her. Finally, A wise man saw her desperate state and suggested she go to see the Buddha. He told her, "This is a man of great wisdom and power. If anyone can help you, it is him." Clinging to this last shred of hope, Kisagotami ran to the grove where the Buddha was teaching. She fell at his feet, laid her son down, and told her story through a torrent of tears, begging him for a cure. The Buddha looked at her, not with pity, but with an ocean of calm, profound compassion. He did not offer her a false miracle or a comforting platitude. Instead, he said to her, "There is only one thing that can help you. You must go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed. But it must be a mustard seed from a house where no one has ever died." Kisagotami's heart soared with hope. A single mustard seed, that was all. It seemed so simple. She thanked the Buddha profusely and began her quest immediately. She went to the first house she saw and knocked on the door. "The Buddha has sent me," she explained. "I need a mustard seed to make a medicine for my child. Can you give me one?" "Of course," the woman at the door said. "We have plenty." As the woman went to get it, Kisagotami remembered the Buddha's condition. "Wait," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Has anyone in this house ever died?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said softly, "the living are few, but the dead are many. We lost my father just last year." With a heavy heart, Kisagotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere she went. Every family, no matter how rich or poor, how happy or sad they appeared on the surface, had a story of loss. "I lost my husband," said one. "I lost my sister," said another. "We lost our youngest child," a couple whispered, their eyes filled with a familiar pain. House after house, her desperate hope was met with the quiet, unyielding truth of human mortality. As the sun began to set, Kisagotami sat down at the edge of the village, the small body of her son still in her arms. No mustard seed was in her hand, but something profound had shifted within her. Her frantic, sharp, personal grief, the grief that screamed, "Why me? Why my son?" had slowly, gently begun to soften and expand. As she looked out at the flickering lights of the village, she realized that her sorrow was not a unique curse. It was a shared inheritance. The pain in her heart was the same pain that resided behind every door she had knocked on. In that moment, her personal tragedy dissolved into a universal truth. She was not alone in her grief. She was part of a vast family of beings who all must face the pain of loss. Her heart, once shattered by her own suffering, now began to tremble with compassion for the suffering of all. She understood the Buddha's lesson. He had not sent her on a quest for a magical seed, but on a journey into the heart of the human condition. She gently carried her son to the cremation ground, and with a heart full of sorrow, but also of profound, quiet understanding, she returned to the Buddha, not for a cure, but for the path. This is karuna. It is the wisdom that arises when we see that our own suffering connects us to everyone, rather than isolating us from them. It is the active response to this understanding. It is what motivates us to speak a kind word to a stranger who looks sad, to listen deeply to a friend in pain, to work towards a more just and gentle world. Compassion is not a passive state of feeling sad for others. It is the engine of altruism, the very heart of what we call humanity. It is the awakened heart's only possible response to the truth of dukkha. And in practicing it, we find that in the act of trying to heal the suffering of others, we are, in fact, healing ourselves. After opening the heart to the vastness of suffering with compassion, the path requires a delicate and essential balance. A heart that only learns to tremble with the world's sorrow risks becoming heavy, burdened, and eventually exhausted. The spiritual path is not a journey into perpetual solemnity. It is a path of liberation, and liberation is joyful. An awakened heart must not only know how to cry with those who cry, but also how to dance with those who dance. It must be as open to the light of happiness as it is to the darkness of pain. This capacity, this active and wholehearted participation in the joy of others, is called mudita. It is often translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy, and it is one of the most beautiful and perhaps most challenging of the heart's trainings. It is the direct and potent antidote to the poison of envy. We live in a world that is a perfect incubator for envy and jealousy. Our screens are endless rivers of curated success, filtered happiness, and celebrated achievements. We scroll through the promotions, the engagements, the beautiful vacations, and the public accolades of others. And if we are not mindful, a subtle and corrosive process begins in the mind. A feeling of lack, a quiet comparison, a sting of resentment. We see another's success, and instead of feeling happy for them, we feel a little worse about ourselves. We unconsciously operate from a place of scarcity, from a deep-seated belief that happiness is a limited resource, a zero-sum game. If they get a bigger slice of the pie, it must mean there is less pie for me. This mindset is the source of immense, self-inflicted suffering. It traps us in a small, lonely prison of our own ego, a place where the only joy available is our own, and even that is constantly threatened by the achievements of others. Mudita is the radical act of rebellion against this prison of scarcity. It is the conscious cultivation of a mind of abundance. It is the wisdom to understand that joy is not a finite commodity to be hoarded. It is an infinite, renewable resource, like the light of the sun. Another person's happiness does not cast a shadow on yours. It simply adds more light to the world. Envy makes us poor because it restricts our access to happiness to only the infrequent moments of our own personal triumphs. It forces us to live on a meager diet of self-congratulation. Mudita, on the other hand, makes us immeasurably rich. It throws open the doors of our heart and allows us to share in the happiness of every single being. With mudita, a friend's success becomes our success. A stranger's moment of delight becomes our delight. We suddenly have access to billions of sources of joy. The heart that cultivates mudita has found an inexhaustible wellspring of happiness, one that does not depend on its own fleeting circumstances. The practice of mudita, like all these heart practices, is an active training. It requires us to gently but firmly go against the grain of our conditioning. The practice can begin in moments of quiet reflection, but its true laboratory is daily life. When you hear of a colleague's accomplishment, notice the mind's first reaction. Does it compare? Does it feel a pang of jealousy? Does it start to formulate a list of your own competing achievements? Simply notice this without judgment. This is the conditioned mind running its old, unhelpful programs. Then, with gentle intention, you pivot. You consciously call forth the spirit of mudita. You can say silently to yourself, "How wonderful for them. They worked hard for this, and now they are experiencing the fruit of their efforts. I am so happy that this joy exists in the world." Feel the words. Try to let a genuine warmth blossom in your chest. It might feel artificial at first, and that is perfectly normal. We are carving a new neural pathway, and that takes repetition and patience. You can start with those for whom it is easiest to feel joy: a beloved child laughing, a dear friend achieving a lifelong dream. Savor their happiness. Let it soak into you. Feel the lightness it brings. Then, you gradually widen the circle. You extend it to acquaintances, to people you see in your community. You might see a happy couple walking hand in hand, and instead of feeling a sense of lack, you practice feeling joy for the love they have found. You see a story online about someone's creative success, and you practice celebrating it as a win for the human spirit. The final, most challenging stage is to extend mudita to those we actively dislike or feel we are in competition with. To feel genuine joy for the success of a rival, this is a profound and deeply transformative practice. It dissolves the very foundations of ill will and frees us from the exhausting burden of rivalry. When you can genuinely wish for the happiness and success of your perceived enemy, you have achieved a supreme form of freedom. The most elegant and simple illustration of mudita is the parable of the candle. Imagine a single candle, burning steadily in a dark room. Its flame is bright and beautiful. This is your happiness. Now, imagine another candle is brought into the room, its wick unlit. You bring your candle close and touch your flame to the unlit wick. In an instant, the second candle springs to life, and the room is now filled with twice as much light. Observe the crucial point. In the act of giving its flame, the first candle did not lose anything. Its own light was not diminished in any way. It did not become smaller, or weaker, or less bright. It simply shared what it had, and in doing so, the total amount of light and warmth in the world increased. This is the very nature of joy. Sharing it does not deplete it. Celebrating another's joy does not subtract from your own. It multiplies the total happiness available to all. Envy is the delusion that you must protect your flame, hoard it, and keep it away from others, lest it be diminished. Mudita is the wisdom of knowing you are a source of light that can illuminate the world without ever losing your own brilliance. This practice is deeply connected to the core teachings on interconnectedness and the illusory nature of a separate self. Envy is a product of a hardened, insecure ego. The ego believes I am a separate entity in competition with other separate entities. It constantly measures and compares itself, seeking to establish its superiority. Mudita arises from a deeper, wiser perspective. It comes from the understanding that we are not isolated islands. We are interconnected threads in a single, vast tapestry. The success and happiness of one thread adds to the beauty and strength of the entire fabric. When we celebrate another's joy, We are celebrating the flourishing of life itself, a process in which we are inextricably a part. It dismantles the lonely fortress of the ego and fosters a profound sense of community and kinship. The feeling of isolation, which is so prevalent in our competitive culture, begins to dissolve in the warm, shared light of appreciative joy. A heart filled with mudita is a friendly heart, a heart that sees allies and fellow travelers everywhere, not rivals and threats. It is a happy heart because it has learned the secret that the easiest way to feel good is to celebrate the good that is already happening all around us. It is, in the end, a wise heart, for it understands that our own liberation is deeply intertwined with the happiness of all. We have walked through the radiant gardens of the heart. We have learned to cultivate metta, the gentle, unconditional warmth of loving kindness. We have explored karuna, the courageous trembling of the heart that moves towards suffering, not away from it. We have celebrated mudita, the selfless, appreciative joy that delights in the happiness of others. These three qualities are luminous, powerful, and transformative. They are the expressions of a truly open heart. But a garden, no matter how beautiful, requires more than just sunlight and water. It needs the deep, steady, nourishing earth itself. A heart that is only filled with powerful emotions, even positive ones, can become unstable. Loving kindness, without wisdom, can curdle into possessive attachment and grief. Compassion, without balance, can drown in despair and burnout. Sympathetic joy, without grounding, can become a form of restless, manic excitement. What is the deep earth that holds the roots of this garden? What is the calm center that allows these powerful energies to flow without overwhelming us? This brings us to the fourth and culminating quality of the awakened heart, the great protector and harmonizer known as upekkha. We translate it as equanimity, but this single word barely scratches the surface of its profound meaning. Upekkha is balance, steadiness, non-reactivity, and a vast, spacious impartiality. It is the unshakable peace of a mind that has found its true center. It is not the peak of the mountain, but the mountain itself, solid, stable, and serene, allowing all the seasons of life to unfold upon its surface without ever losing its fundamental stillness. It is absolutely essential to understand what upekkha is not. In our culture, which often equates passion with caring, equanimity can be mistaken for its opposite, indifference. It can sound cold, aloof, uncaring, or detached. But this is a profound misunderstanding. Indifference is a state of contraction, a closing of the heart. It says, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Its root is aversion and ignorance. Upekkha, in stark contrast, is a state of radical openness and expansion. Its root is wisdom and profound care. It is a love so vast and unconditional that it does not get caught in the drama of picking and choosing, of liking and disliking. Indifference is a stone, hard and lifeless. Upekkha is like the vast, open sky. The sky does not fight the storm clouds, nor does it cling to the brilliant sunshine. It allows all weather fierce winds, gentle rain, dark clouds, glorious light to pass through its boundless expanse without being defined or damaged by any of it. The sky's nature remains pure, open, and unchanged. Equanimity is the sky of the mind. The ultimate training ground for upekkha is in our relationship with what the Buddha called the 8 worldly winds. These are the inevitable, uncontrollable gusts of fortune and misfortune that blow through every human life. They come in 4 pairs of opposites: pleasure and pain, praise and blame, gain and loss, and fame and disrepute. The untrained mind is like a weather vane, spun around helplessly by these winds. When the wind of pleasure blows, we are elated, grasping, wanting more. When the inevitable wind of pain follows, we are devastated, resistant, and filled with aversion. When the wind of praise comes, our ego inflates with pride. When the wind of blame hits us, we collapse into shame or lash out in anger. We chase gain and fame, and we run from loss and obscurity. Our happiness becomes entirely conditional, a fragile thing dependent on external circumstances we can never fully control. We become slaves to the next compliment, the next success, the next fleeting pleasure. This is the very definition of a life of anxiety and insecurity. Upekkha is the path to freedom from this slavery. It does not mean we no longer feel pleasure or pain. The realized being still feels the warmth of the sun and the sting of a cut. The difference is in the reaction. The mind grounded in equanimity does not cling to the pleasure, demanding it stay forever. It does not compound the pain with a secondary layer of mental anguish, resistance, and storytelling. It allows the pleasant feeling to be what it is, pleasant and temporary. It allows the painful feeling to be what it is, painful and temporary. It observes the worldly winds with a quiet, knowing wisdom. It sees praise arise and it notes, This is praise. It is pleasant. It is impermanent. It sees blame arise, and it notes, this is blame. It is unpleasant. It is impermanent. By not adding the fuel of grasping or aversion, the fire of emotional reactivity never truly ignites. This profound stability is born from two deep insights we have already explored. Anicca, impermanence, and Kamma, the law of cause and effect. A deep, gut-level understanding of impermanence is the bedrock of equanimity. When you truly know that all things are in a constant state of flux, you stop trying to build a permanent home on the shifting sands of praise or gain. You learn to appreciate the pleasant moments without desperately trying to freeze them in time, and you learn to endure the difficult moments with patience, knowing that they too shall pass. The second root is a wise understanding of Kamma. This is the wisdom to know what is and is not in our control. We are the masters of our intentions and our actions. We have the power to plant wholesome seeds, act with integrity, kindness, and mindfulness. The results of those actions, however, are subject to a near infinite number of other conditioning factors. We can plant the best seed with the greatest care, but we cannot control the weather, the quality of the soil, or the presence of pests. Equanimity, then, is the wisdom to focus all our energy on the quality of our actions in the present moment, and then to release our attachment to the outcome with trust and peace. We do our best, and then we let go. This release is the source of incredible freedom and relief from the anxiety of trying to control the uncontrollable. The great metaphor for upekkha is that of a mighty mountain. Imagine an ancient, colossal mountain, its peaks reaching into the clouds, its base rooted deep in the earth. It has stood for millions of years. The winds howl from the east, carrying dust and heat, but the mountain is not shaken. Storms rage from the west, bringing torrential rain and lightning, but the mountain remains stable. The north brings blizzards and ice. The south brings humidity and haze. Day after day, season after season, the weather changes, sometimes violently, but the mountain itself remains. It is not indifferent to the weather. Its surface is washed by the rain and warmed by the sun. But its core, its essential being, is one of profound stillness and stability. A mind cultivated in upekkha is like this mountain. The winds of praise and blame, gain and loss may blow fiercely, but our inner center remains tranquil, steadfast, and deeply at peace. Upekkha is the great protector of the heart, the balancing force that makes the other three immeasurable qualities sustainable and wise. It keeps metta, loving kindness, from becoming selfish attachment. We can love deeply and wish for another's happiness, but if things don't go their way, equanimity prevents our love from turning into despair. It keeps karuna, compassion, from being overwhelmed by the world's suffering. It is the spaciousness that allows us to be present with immense pain without being destroyed by it, protecting us from compassion, fatigue. It balances mudita, appreciative joy, keeping it from becoming overexcited or attached to another's success. Upekkha is the vast, calm container that holds these other three precious jewels, allowing their light to shine with wisdom and grace. It is the final, crowning glory of the four immeasurables, bringing them all into perfect, harmonious balance. It is the peace that a heart finds when it has finally come to rest in the nature of reality itself. We have now journeyed through the vast and profound landscape of the Dharma. We have looked unflinchingly at the nature of our universal condition, the pervasive sense of unease that the Buddha called dukkha. We have traced its roots to the fires of craving and aversion, all fueled by a fundamental misunderstanding of reality. And we have been given a map, the Noble Eightfold Path, a practical and comprehensive guide to lead us out of the wilderness. We have explored the beautiful qualities of the heart, the boundless states of loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and the serene stability of equanimity. And now, we arrive at the most crucial juncture of all. It is the point where the beautiful theory must meet the messy, complicated, and often chaotic reality of our daily lives. The natural question that arises is, this is all wonderful, but how? How do I practice this when I have deadlines to meet, bills to pay, a family to care for, and a world full of noise and distraction? Where is the time for a path that seems so demanding? This is the most important question, because a path that cannot be walked in the midst of everyday life is not a path of liberation, but a path of escapism. The beauty of the Buddhist teaching is that it was designed for this. It is not about retreating from the world, but about transforming our relationship to it. The goal is not to build a quiet, pristine meditation chamber and hide there, but to learn how to find that chamber of peace within our own hearts, a sanctuary we can access even in the middle of a crowded city street. The first step is to dismantle the myth that practice is something that only happens for an hour a day on a meditation cushion. That formal sitting is invaluable. It is the sharpening of the tools. But the true practice is how we use those tools throughout the other 23 hours of the day. Life itself becomes the meditation hall. Let us begin with the power of the small. We often think we need to make grand, sweeping changes, but true transformation is built from tiny, consistent moments of awareness. Consider the practice of micro-meditations. These are deliberate pauses, anchors of sanity, scattered throughout your day. It could be the 3-breath pause. Before you hit send on a reactive email, before you answer a ringing phone, before you walk into a potentially stressful meeting, you simply stop. You take one conscious breath, noticing the feeling of the air entering your body. You take a second conscious breath, perhaps noticing the feeling of your feet on the floor, grounding you. You take a third conscious breath, and as you exhale, you intentionally let go of some of the tension in your shoulders or your jaw. This entire practice might take 10 seconds, but in those 10 seconds, you have stepped out of the frantic stream of unconscious reactivity and created a space of freedom. You can choose your response instead of being driven by impulse. You can extend this to any routine activity. Choose one task you do every day, like washing the dishes, brushing your teeth, or making your morning coffee. For those few minutes, resolve to do only that one thing. Instead of letting your mind race ahead to the next 10 items on your to-do list, bring your full attention to the task at hand. If you are washing dishes, feel the warmth of the water on your hands. Hear the sound of the plates clinking together. See the soap bubbles shimmering with light. When the mind wanders, as it will, gently and kindly guide it back to the sensations of washing the dishes. This is not about becoming the world's best dishwasher. It is about training the mind to be present, to be where the body is. These small islands of mindfulness become refuges of peace in the midst of a busy day. Our relationships are perhaps the most fertile and most challenging ground for practice. It is easy to feel compassionate towards all sentient beings in the abstract. It is much harder when your partner, your parent, or your colleague is saying the one thing that pushes all of your buttons. This is where the practice gets real. We can transform our relationships into a living monastery. We can practice deep listening, not with the intent to reply, argue, or fix, but with the sole purpose of understanding the other person's world. To offer someone your silent, focused, non-judgmental presence is one of the greatest gifts you can give. We can bring right speech into our arguments. Before we speak, we can ask ourselves those 4 crucial questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it helpful? This practice can avert immense suffering for ourselves and others. Most powerfully, we can begin to see difficult people not as obstacles to our peace, but as our greatest teachers. The person who constantly annoys you is a masterclass in patience. The person who criticizes you unfairly is a PhD-level course in equanimity and the nature of the ego. When you reframe conflict as curriculum, you are never again a victim. You are always a student on the path of wisdom. In the same way, all of life's challenges can be seen not as problems, but as opportunities. When you are stuck in a traffic jam, the conditioned mind tenses up, the heart rate rises, and you stew in frustration and anger. This is suffering. But here is the opportunity. You can notice the anger rising. You can name it silently. Ah, anger is here. You can take a conscious breath into the feeling of tension. You can notice the color of the car in front of you, the sound of the radio, the feeling of the steering wheel beneath your hands. The traffic jam has not changed, but you have transformed it from a moment of torment into an unexpected 5-minute mindfulness retreat. The mud of life is the very substance that grows the lotus of awakening. Without the difficulties, we would have no grit to sharpen our patience, no losses to deepen our understanding of impermanence, no pain to awaken our compassion. This path, while deeply personal, is not meant to be walked entirely alone. The Buddha emphasized the importance of Sangha, the community of fellow practitioners. In the modern world, this doesn't have to mean a formal monastery. Your Sangha could be a local meditation group. It could be a book club that discusses these ideas. It could be 2 or 3 trusted friends with whom you can speak honestly about your practice, sharing your struggles and your small victories. This community provides encouragement when you feel lost, inspiration when you see others making progress, and a vital sense of shared purpose. It reminds you that you are not alone in this journey to live a more conscious and compassionate life. Ultimately, integrating all of this into our lives comes down to one final, liberating shift in perspective. We must let go of the idea that we are practicing now in order to get to some perfect, peaceful destination in the future. This very striving for a future result is the engine of dukkha. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh said it most perfectly. There is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. The point is not to breathe mindfully today, so that you can finally be peaceful tomorrow. The mindful breath, right now, is the moment of peace. The point is not to speak a kind word in order to build up good karma for a future reward. The kind word, as it is spoken, is the moment of connection and liberation from ill will. The moment of patience in a traffic jam is not a means to an end. That moment of patience is the end. It is the destination. Freedom is not a grand prize you win at the end of the spiritual race. Freedom is stitched together from these countless, small, conscious moments. Every time you choose a wise response over a habitual reaction, you are free. Every time you choose compassion over judgment, you are free. Every time you come back to the present moment, you are free. The path is not a path to peace. The path is peace, step by mindful step. Your life, exactly as it is, with all its beauty and all its challenges, is the curriculum, the monastery, and the path itself. All that is required is for you to show up for it, with awareness, with courage, and with a kind and open heart. Let us return, for a moment, to Sarah, the woman we met at the beginning of our journey, sitting in her beautiful apartment, surrounded by the markers of success, yet feeling a profound and nameless void. The journey we have taken is the journey she has taken. Her life, from the outside, may not look dramatically different. The city still hums with a relentless energy. The deadlines at her job still arrive, and life continues to present its unpredictable challenges. But from the inside, everything has changed. The void has been filled, not with another external achievement, but with a quiet, spacious awareness. She now finds moments of stillness in the silence between her thoughts. She meets the pressure of a deadline with the gentle anchor of her own breath. She looks at her colleagues and competitors not with anxiety, but with a newfound sense of compassion, seeing in them the same fundamental desire for happiness and freedom from suffering that she has discovered in herself. Her search, which began as a desperate hunt for something more out there in the world, has led her back to the one place she never thought to look: the simple, luminous, and ever-present reality of her own heart and mind. Her journey is our journey. It is the ancient, timeless pilgrimage from suffering to understanding, from confusion to clarity. The core of this entire exploration, the single truth that radiates through every teaching, is this: peace is not a destination we arrive at once. All our problems are solved. It is not an exotic location free from noise, difficulty, or pain. Peace is not the silence that follows the storm. It is the stillness at the center of the storm. The wisdom of this path does not offer us an escape from the conditions of our life. It offers us a way to find freedom within those very conditions. It provides the tools to build an inner refuge, a place of profound stability and clarity that we can learn to access at any moment, regardless of the chaos that may be unfolding around us. It is a peace that is not conditional, but inherent. It is not something we must acquire, but something we must uncover. And so, we are left with a quiet, yet powerful sense of empowerment. The capacity for this peace, this freedom, this unshakable well-being, is not the exclusive property of ancient sages or secluded monastics. It is the birthright of every human being. It resides within you, right now, waiting to be cultivated. You have the ability to change your relationship with your own thoughts and emotions. You hold the key to unlock a kinder, more compassionate way of being in the world. The path has been illuminated. The tools have been offered. There is no grand, momentous leap you must take. All that is ever required is the courage to take the first, small step, a single conscious breath, a moment of patient listening, a silent thought of goodwill for another. This is where the entire journey begins, and where it is renewed, moment by moment. That single step, taken now, in the midst of your own beautiful, messy, and precious life, is the only step that ever matters. It is a step toward home,